Chapter 619. The next day, in the early morning, the whole Shunning City was filled with the pungent smell of blood. The 3,000 Northern Battlefront army that stayed in Shunning City last night were almost wiped out. 100,000 guards of the prince's mansion were disabled, and less than 40,000 soldiers were left. The Northern Region Restoration Society had paid an even heavier price. Nearly 80,000 cultivators had died in Shunning City. Many of their spies and strongholds had been seized by the Northern Region Lord's mansion. Even some of the strongholds outside the city had been found out. Even without the loss of all kinds of materials, the Northern Region Restoration Society had suffered a great loss. And all of this was just for Yan Hua. Luo Su stretched out his hand and rubbed his temples. His expression was uncertain as he murmured, "It seems that we thought too simply before. This Yan Hua is definitely not as simple as he looks on the surface. Someone behind him is very likely to be the president of the Restoration Society. Moreover, the relationship between the two should be something like father and son or master and disciple. This is the negligence of your brocade guard." Yi Bilan looked at Luo Su coldly and said, "If you didn't transfer my men away, Yan Hua wouldn't have been able to leave. You have to take full responsibility for this." Luo Su stared back at him and growled, "Why didn't I transfer your men away? You just wanted to go back to the border and tried to provoke us to fight with the 3 strongholds. You didn't see the big picture at all. If I didn't transfer your men away, Yan Hua would have died without knowing why. How could I explain it to the Dragon King then? See the big picture? See the big picture. You dragged us all here." Yi Bilan overturned the table beside him. His eyes were bloodshot, and he breathed heavily. He had applied for a full-scale war with the 3 strongholds, and before the Northern Restoration Society reacted, they would get rid of the tumor. But last night, all the members of the Northern Restoration Society in the 3 strongholds turned into bandits. Even the spies hiding in the strongholds didn't have time to send back the news, which made the Northern Restoration Society extremely passive. They even had to transfer a lot of forces to quell the rebellion, which made the defense of Shunning City empty yesterday, and let the Northern Restoration Society take advantage of the loophole. But now it was all right. Shunning City had killed many rebels of the Northern Restoration Society in the battle yesterday, but they had also suffered heavy losses. On their side, except for the rebels in the 3 strongholds, they didn't gain anything at all. They didn't even get any decent information from torture. Not only did they embarrass themselves, even Bai Yi and the embroidered uniform guard's abilities were being questioned. For the time being, he could forget about returning to the borders to manage unremitting night. The spies he had set up in the Frost Mirror Grassland and the Azure River Empire had all been abandoned. Who knew how much effort he would have to put in to rebuild them? "Gentlemen, there's no need to quarrel." Zhang Xiuzhu, who had changed into a dark green windbreaker, pushed open the door and walked into the temporary meeting room. His black and white eyes flashed. "You too." Yi Bilan watched his capable subordinate change his clothes, and the anger on his face gradually turned into confusion. "Let me introduce myself. I am the director of MI7, Zhang Xiuzhu." Zhang Xiuzhu flicked his dark green windbreaker and then pulled a chair to sit down. He then said in a deep voice, "The unforeseen event in Shunning City last night was indeed not small, but it's not like we didn't gain anything at all. Yu Dingchen, the deputy director of MI7, infiltrated a small organization under the Northern Restoration Society last night. He is expected to leave Shunning City in 15 minutes. I hope you two can let him go." They didn't have time to digest how Zhang Xiuzhu had suddenly become the director of MI7, but his words made their eyes light up at the same time. The Northern Restoration Society was still under their supervision. According to the next plan, Director Yi can also take Yi Busho back to the border. All the work of the Northern Restoration Society will no longer have anything to do with Yi Busho. As long as Director Yi organizes the corresponding information and sends it to the Demon Emperors Association before leaving, Commander Luo and I will take care of the rest. And Commander Luo, by the order of Dragon King, from today on, the Brocade Guard will be fully under the command of MI7. Commander Luo's official position will remain unchanged, but the opinion of MI7 will be the first priority for all matters related to the Northern Restoration Society. Zhang Xiuzhu cupped his fists at the two men, his expression still calm. He didn't have the mentality of being able to stand side by side with Yi Balan and Luo Su, and he wasn't naive enough to think that he could be their superior. It was only because of Yu Dingxin's unexpected gain in dealing with the Northern Restoration Society that he had a head start. In the face of the two veteran spy chiefs, Zhang Xiuzhu still held a considerable amount of reverence. "I'll give the order." Yi Balan's face lit up. He immediately responded, then got up and left the conference room. He didn't have too many concerns. After all, the nature of his Yi Busho was completely different from that of the Brocade Guard. Compared to an intelligence agency that could become a general, Yi Busho was originally one of the military's fighting forces. It was just that they rarely confronted each other on the battlefield. He had never regarded himself as a spy chief, nor did he want to compete with Luo Su for power and profit, following Sherdong's old path. For the current him, as long as he could leave Shunning City and return to the battlefield he was familiar with, it would be the best thing. Zhang Xiuzhu pondered for a moment. Looking at Luo Su's scrutinizing eyes, he chuckled and said, "Commander Luo, you don't have to look at me like that. I won't be Sherdong's successor, and I have no intention of arm wrestling with Commander Luo. MI7 is indeed a newly established spy agency, but our eyes are mainly focused on the military. Except for the Northern Restoration Society, we have almost no overlap." Luo Su snorted coldly. Although he didn't say anything, his eyes were kind. He wasn't someone who didn't know what was good for him, and he didn't expect to be able to control the entire management of the northern region. The emergence of MI7 would undoubtedly cut off all the tentacles of the Imperial Secret Service that had infiltrated the military. However, without Sherdong as a stumbling block, his power in the northern region would not be inferior to that of Li Zhongsheng, the king of the northern region. That was enough. "I'll inform the Brocade Guard guarding the entrance of Shunning City." Luo Su nodded slightly and stepped out of the conference room. He didn't want to communicate with Zhang Xiuzhu. After all, Yu Dingxin used to be a member of the Genie Guards. Most of the guards knew this Qinhu who used to be in charge of punishment in the Yamen. Therefore, he only needed to greet him. There was no need for him to keep watch at the entrance of Shunning City. Moreover, now was not the time to shed all pretense of cordiality. After all, the further tracking of the Northern Restoration Society was in the hands of Zhang Xiuzhu. If Yu Dingxin wanted to kick him out, there was no reason for him to make things difficult for himself. Chapter 620. Northern Frontier King's Mansion, Back Courtyard. Li Zhong and Lin Yuan sat facing each other, staring at the chessboard in front of them. A black piece fell from Lin Yuan's fingertips, and the situation once again fell into a disadvantage. Li Zhong smiled helplessly and decisively admitted defeat. He smiled bitterly and said, "There is no need to struggle. The dragon has been cut down, and there are not many pieces left. There is no point in continuing this game other than wasting time. I have lost." Lin Yuan, who was sitting in front of him, nodded slightly and said meaningfully, "You can decisively admit defeat, but some people do not seem to understand this and insist on wasting time with this king. Say, how long do you think he can live? It is hard to say. This guy hides too well." Li Zhong shook his head lightly and said helplessly, "However, the Northern Restoration Society suffered great losses in last night's bloody battle. They will not cause any more trouble in the short term. However, I feel that there are many strange things behind this matter. It seems, the Northern Restoration Society's power has only revealed the tip of the iceberg." Lin Yuan was silent. He stared at Li Zhong, waiting for him to continue. "But the strange thing is, if the Northern Restoration Society has such great power and intends to overthrow our rule on the northern frontier, they will not reveal their existence at this time. Once the Sky Demon Corps completely destroys the army of the Shenwu dynasty and then places troops on the Wei River, most of our forces will be transferred over. That will be the time when our rear is at its weakest. If the Northern Restoration Society chooses to act at that time, our foundation will be instantly destroyed. So, What is the point of sacrificing so many members of the Northern Restoration Society for Yanhua? I cannot guess whether the upper echelons of the Northern Restoration Society have changed their strategy and plan to give up on the low-level members and walk the path of elites. They want to hide in the northern frontier in a way that is not easily detected. Or does Yanhua have some unknown secret that can make the upper echelons of the Northern Restoration Society make such a risky decision? Li Zhong sighed faintly. All those who were good at strategizing did not care about how their opponents looked at the big picture and how well they planned. The only opponents they were worried about were two kinds of people. One was the unconstrained genius, and the other was the boorish man who acted without thinking. In essence, the two were the same, but the former's rash actions were always for a reason, while the latter's gains and losses were all due to the accident of their rash actions. We will know what Fu Bei is thinking in the future. Lin Yuan threw the black pieces into the box one by one. His face was expressionless as he said indifferently, in any case, Fu Bei Union won't be able to make any big moves in a short period of time. You should keep an eye on them first. After a while, I will go south to the Endless Sea. Ao Qian of the Western Sea Dragon Palace was still waiting at the northern frontier. She urged Lin Yuan to go to the Endless Sea more and more frequently. Apparently, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was losing patience with Lin Yuan, who refused to go to the Endless Sea. 2 months was already the limit that Lin Yuan could buy. After all, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was extremely cooperative in the matter of welcoming the cultists to the south of the Shenwu dynasty, including the follow-up series of cleanup work, which required the cooperation of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. If they were really annoyed, not only would the problem of the cultists not be solved, even the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would become Lin Yuan's next opponent. Even if he could give up the route to the Endless Sea, with the help of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, the south would not be peaceful, and the next step of his plan would be difficult. At that time, the whole strategic plan would have to be changed, which would be very troublesome. Go to the Endless Sea? But aren't you? Li Zhong was slightly startled. Apparently, he did not expect Lin Yuan's plan to be like this. This puppet body was only controlled by his spiritual sense. Not to mention whether Lin Yuan's spiritual sense could extend from the Hengduan Mountains to the Endless Sea, it would undoubtedly be a provocation and disrespect to meet those dragon bloodline demonic beasts with the current appearance of the puppet body. Naturally, I have my ways. Lin Yuan gently waved his hand. The puppet's pitch-black eyes dimmed, and it suddenly opened its mouth. The nether realm black water stored in its hollow body rushed out, forming black humanoid monsters in the courtyard. Only then did he say in a deep voice, "These nether realm servants that I have refined are all immortal existences. If there are any changes in the northern frontier when I'm not around, you can command them to take action." At this point, Li Zhong's eyes were already filled with excitement. How terrifying was an immortal army! The Sky Demon, who was known to be immortal and indestructible, had already made the entire Tianwu continent helpless. On the other hand, the Sky Demon's side did not have a physical body. When it existed in the world as a spiritual body, it was very difficult for it to cause any harm to other living beings. However, it still relied on its terrifying ability to penetrate through every opening to defeat the elite troops of the Shenwu dynasty. Lin Yuan's nether realm servants were also immortal and indestructible. Furthermore, they did not have any cooldown time. If they were scattered on the spot, they would be reborn on the spot. If one did not think things through and directly attacked the black liquid, they would be instantly pulled in and quickly assimilated into something similar to the nether realm servants. However, not only are these things not tolerated by the heavens and the earth, they will also cause the top powers to be fearful. After all, the Sky Demon's chaos has already left them in a terrible fix. If they know that I have created something even more terrifying than the Sky Demon, they will definitely not allow the northern frontier to grow. Thus, if I can avoid using them, then I will not use them. After all, if the effects of some cards being played first are too good, it will only cause other gamblers to flip the table. Lin Yuan's pitch-black eyes flickered. He mercilessly used cold water to extinguish the flames in Li Zhong's heart. With the support of the heavens, the growth of the northern frontier far exceeded everyone's expectations. Heavenly Dipper realm experts that were rarely seen in other places were as common as dogs in the northern frontier. Over the past 2 months, Li Zhong, Jiu Jianxian, Chen Guanshan, and other veteran experts of the past had all broken through to the void realm or come in contact with that threshold. In terms of strength, they were not weaker than any of the empires. However, compared to the top powers that were above the empires, they were still in their infancy and could be destroyed at any time. All of them keep saying that they will unite all their forces to protect the Tianwu continent, but they can't bear to see us grow. Li Zhong raised his eyebrows, and a look of resentment flashed in his eyes. That is what they say, and that is what they do. Lin Yuan sneered and said in a cold voice, unfortunately, their so-called unity refers to existences that can grow to a similar level as them. People like us who are destined to surpass them might be a greater threat than the things on the other side of the heavenly gates. After all, they have been high and mighty for so many years. How could they tolerate the day when they bow and scrape to us? Chapter 621. Well said. A loud and clear voice sounded. Immediately after, Lei Qiusheng, who was wearing a long black robe, strode into the courtyard. Seeing that Lin Yuan and Li Zhong's gazes had landed on him at the same time, Lei Qiusheng shook his black robe and sneered. Those old things just can't bear to see others have the chance to step on their heads. No matter who has the slightest hint of this, they will immediately extinguish it. Some of the ancient forces that had disappeared in the long river of history were because of the existence on the other side of the heavenly gates, but more of it was because of the knives that these so-called allies had handed over behind their backs. Like those aristocratic families, the long period of rule had caused them to forget most of their common sense. They believed that they should be superior to most people since they were born. This was very clear from the fact that the various top forces had ordered the emperors of the various empires to not allow them to break through to the Heaven Star border realm. Those who were truly talented would also be secretly absorbed into their own camps. This stance clearly meant that they planned to enslave the entire Tianwu continent forever. A foreign species like Lin Yuan, who had suddenly risen, was undoubtedly a thorn in the side and a thorn in the flesh in the eyes of those top forces. However, Lin Yuan's casual lie of retreating was dramatically related to an ancient force that had disappeared in the long river of time. In addition, with the help of the system, Lin Yuan had created various strange phenomena, and his soul had come from a world outside the sea of misery. This also made those top forces firmly believe that Lin Yuan was indeed the reincarnation of an ancient demon god. If not for this tiger skin hanging on his body, what awaited Lin Yuan would definitely be inexplicable suppression and extinction. Although those top forces were still considered friendly to Lin Yuan, that was only because they did not know how many existences from the so-called ancient demon court were behind Lin Yuan. Whether it was the Frost Mirror Barbarian entering the north or the Sky Demon Chaos being handed over to Lin Yuan to handle, they were all tests that the top forces were testing Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan could still handle everything with ease and could suppress the ambitions of those top forces. If Lin Yuan was unable to hold on or showed signs of fatigue, then that would be the time for the top forces to swarm over and devour Lin Yuan and the northern frontier. What are you doing here? Lin Yuan glanced at Lei Qiusheng. His heart skipped a beat, but he did not reveal the slightest bit of joy. Lei Qiusheng, who had benefited from the benefits, would not give up the opportunity to continue trading with Lin Yuan. Furthermore, he had used up all his stock, so it was impossible for him to obtain anything good to continue trading with Lin Yuan in a short period of time. The only things left that could be traded were the illusory things that Lin Yuan had mentioned before. After seeing the miracle that Lin Yuan had brought about, Lei Qiusheng naturally would not be unmoved. Trade, my god. Lei Qiusheng's expression turned solemn as he respectfully bowed to Lin Yuan. The corners of Li Zhong's eyes twitched, but he still tactfully got up and greeted Lin Yuan before hurriedly leaving. Lin Yuan had many secrets on him. When he revealed them, those who knew the secrets would be able to ponder what benefits they would bring to themselves. However, when Lin Yuan was unwilling to reveal them, those who probed into those secrets would only bring endless calamity to themselves. For example, among the netherworld servants that he had just taught, there were many existences with extremely familiar facial features. Tap. 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 Lin Yuan's fingertips lightly tapped on the chessboard beside him. As if there was a strange magical power, even Lei Qiusheng's heartbeat began to match the rhythm of Lin Yuan's tapping. The chessboard clanged to the same frequency as a large amount of blood gushed to his head, causing Lei Qiusheng's face to turn red. When Lei Qiusheng almost couldn't hold on any longer, Lin Yuan's movements came to an abrupt halt. He smiled and said, "It seems like our emperor has gathered another batch of decent treasures." Standing in front of Lin Yuan, Lei Qiusheng was like a drowning person who had just been fished out of the water, greedily gasping for air. His black robes were already soaked in sweat. Although the redness on his face had begun to subside, his chapped lips and rough skin still proved that Lei Qiusheng was beginning to dehydrate. This was a small punishment. When Lin Yuan was having a private conversation with someone, unless there was something particularly important, no one was allowed to barge in, much less interrupt. The first time was a small punishment, and the second time, Lin Yuan would refine him into a netherworld servant. This was an unspoken rule of the northern frontier. There were those who were willing to abide by it, and those who did not take it seriously. Most of those who did not take it seriously had been handed over to Li Zhong by Lin Yuan, hidden away as a trump card for the northern frontier. Dragon King must be joking. Lei Qiusheng wiped the sweat from his face. His gang qi surged, drying his robes. He smiled bitterly and said, "For the past 2 months, I've been doing my best to hunt down the remnants of the northern society. The spoils of war have also been sent to the Ministry of Works by the embroidered uniform guards, so how could I have the opportunity to search for treasures? But I came this time because the Dragon King said last time that fate can also be used to trade." Lin Yuan let out a long nasal sound, and said with a mocking gaze, "Fate can indeed be used to trade, but I don't recommend your majesty to do such a thing. You should know that a person's fate can be changed, but it must be fixed. Every action is accumulating or consuming fate. If your fate is exhausted, even if you are a cultivator, you may choke to death after drinking cold water." In the examples given by the system, there were idiots who used their own fate to trade. There were many examples of people choking to death after drinking cold water. Even if one's cultivation was profound, and one could not eat or drink after entering the fasting period, it was useless. To give a simple example, in a technological world similar to Lin Yuan's previous life, there was a cultivator hiding in the mountains and rivers in seclusion. Suddenly, a nuclear bomb exploded in the seclusion grounds of a weapon test, causing the cultivator's body and soul to be destroyed. Lei Qiusheng was silent for a moment. Because at the beginning, he was indeed prepared to use his own fate to trade. But this kind of thing where one's cultivation level kept rising by just moving one's mouth was like Pandora's box. Once it was opened, it could not be closed. Even a person like Lei Qiusheng dared not say that he could control his greed and trade to the perfect state. "What I want to trade is not my own fate, but the fate of the Shenwu dynasty." Lei Qiusheng swallowed dryly, and a trace of hesitation flashed across his face. But when the words reached his mouth, they were naturally spat out by him. Today, the Shenwu dynasty existed in name only. Whether it was Lei Qiuming in the south, Lin Yuan in the northern frontier, or the Sky Demon in the central plains, none of them would allow Lei Qiusheng to rise again. Even if he was alive, he could not be the high and mighty monarch. However, looking at the half-dead state of the Shenwu dynasty, there was probably no chance for it to last for thousands of years. Even the nation's fate projection was a little weak at the moment. The nation's might that should have been vast and unstoppable spread, but Lin Yuan was not affected at all. "You still want to struggle? Why bother?" Lin Yuan's voice was heard, and it was as vast and mighty as the heavens. Even Lei Qiusheng, the founding emperor of the Shenwu dynasty, wanted to trade the dynasty's fate to Lin Yuan. However, the Shenwu dynasty's fate did not seem to follow Lei Qiusheng's attitude. The nation's fate projection appeared at this moment to kill Lin Yuan so that it could continue to exist. A black dragon silhouette condensed behind Lin Yuan. Although it was not as tall as the nation's fate projection that was 100,000 feet tall, it was undoubtedly much more solid. The black dragon and the golden man collided. There was no earth-shattering explosion, nor was there a dazzling fight. It was just a simple face-to-face fight. The black dragon wrapped itself around the golden man in circles and kept biting the struggling golden man. It swallowed the Shinwu dynasty's fate piece by piece. This was the deal that Lei Qiusheng made with the Heavenly Tao as the founding emperor of the Shinwu dynasty. The Shinwu dynasty only had one emperor, and even the nation's power that had lasted for thousands of years could not withstand the Heavenly Tao's power that existed since the beginning of time. Therefore, to Lin Yuan, the golden man's appearance was just a dying struggle. Pity flashed through Lei Qiusheng's eyes as he watched the golden man that was getting weaker and weaker. However, he did not say anything. He merely turned his head to the side, not wanting to see the cruel scene of the golden man being devoured. Approximately 5 to 6 minutes later, the golden man was completely devoured. The black dragon also went back into Lin Yuan's body. Ding! Congratulations to the host for devouring the Shinwu dynasty's fate. Attribute points plus 1000. Ding! Congratulations to the host for devouring the Shinwu dynasty's fate. Attribute points plus 1000. Ding! Congratulations to the host for devouring the Shinwu dynasty's fate. Attribute points plus 1000. Almost every time the black dragon took a bite, Lin Yuan could hear a notification sound in his ears. The black dragon was the combination of Lin Yuan's divine consciousness, soul, and the fate of the northern frontier. Although it could not compare to the fate of the Shinwu dynasty, both sides were in the trading ground opened by the Heavenly Tao. No matter how strong a struggling seller was, he could only curl up in a metal cage and suffer the merciless whipping of the buyer. Therefore, the moment the golden man appeared, he had no way of resisting Lin Yuan. However, it was indeed Lin Yuan who attacked. While his attribute points skyrocketed, it also brought Lin Yuan a lot of benefits. It was a pleasant surprise. However, while he was ecstatic in his heart, Lin Yuan did not forget that there was an upper limit to his attribute points storage, so his attribute panel was constantly jumping. The momentum of his body began to skyrocket, and his cultivation broke through one realm after another. Although he could not see the changes in Lin Yuan's body from the puppet's body, Lei Qiusheng could clearly feel that the black-robed man in front of him had become more and more unfathomable. Even he, who was at level 2 of the Void Realm, felt a faint threat. Ding! Congratulations to the host for devouring the fate of a country. You have obtained the talent skill, True Dragon Son of Heaven. Ding! Congratulations to the host for devouring the fate of a country. You have obtained a new title, Nation Fate Devourer. A strange notification sounded, and Lin Yuan immediately focused. However, before Lin Yuan could investigate, Lei Qiusheng's impatient voice sounded, Dragon King, I can feel that the special power in my body has dissipated. You should have received the Shinwu dynasty's fate, right? Then A nation's fate was separated from a person's fate. Although Lei Qiusheng would not be so unlucky after losing the nation's fate, Lei Qiusheng could be said to be invincible in the Shinwu dynasty with the nation's fate protecting him. Even a Void Realm expert might not be able to assassinate him. Even if he encountered some big problems, he could always turn misfortunes into blessings. He even had a certain boost in strength. However, after losing the nation's fate, Lei Qiusheng was really an ordinary cultivator. Although his cultivation was still the same, Lei Qiusheng could feel waves of weakness, as if his body had been hollowed out. This feeling was oppressive, so Lei Qiusheng could not wait to ask for his benefits. He hoped that the benefits he obtained would be able to fill this emptiness. Even if they were both used to improve their cultivation, Lin Yuan could clearly feel that the two kinds of brilliance were completely different things. Even if it was a qualitative change caused by a quantitative change, the last transaction was also the feedback of the power of several thousand incense sticks, but it only made the cyan light more solid and rich. In the last trade, Lei Qiusheng used all kinds of treasures, just like the offerings placed in front of the statue. However, this time, he used the nation's fate to make the trade. Naturally, the feedback was also something like fate. Although he used both to increase his cultivation, using all kinds of weapons and armor in the trade would increase his physical fitness. Using the nation's fate in the trade would increase his own fate. The incense points formed by different offerings are the same to you. They are all numbers on the data panel. However, the feedback to those who made the offerings is completely different. Similarly, the feedback from different incense points is also different. You can refer to the specific formulas for these. The ancient humans sacrificed a bear in exchange for a large increase in physical strength. You still have to figure out more. For example, Lei Qiusheng directly used the nation's fate in exchange for cultivation. Although it doesn't affect us, it's simply a waste of God's gift for him. If the same effort is focused on increasing the power of fate, I dare not say that it's comparable to the protagonists in the novels in your previous life, but it should be comparable to the main supporting characters. Most misfortunes can be turned into blessings. Occasionally, you can also obtain some good opportunities. The system clearly had a different attitude toward harvesting the incense points. It didn't answer all of Lin Yuan's questions, but it wouldn't casually say a few words to deal with him. This was probably because most of the other functions were for Lin Yuan's convenience. When Lin Yuan obtained the incense points, the system could also obtain a lot of benefits. Increase fate? You have such an ability? Lin Yuan was silent for a moment, but still silently ridiculed. Although the system couldn't take the initiative to pry into his heart with the existence of the Ink Abyss's secret technique, it was not a problem for him to take the initiative to talk to the system. Don't you know what kind of existence I am? A line of words appeared in the system. Compared to the previous ink-like words, the words that appeared in the system this time flickered with a golden light, as if it was trying to show its noble status. Lin Yuan was speechless. He felt that this thing was a little shameless. If I can't increase your luck, why do you think you can turn misfortunes into blessings every time? Even the ancient demon court that you casually came up with is treated as real by those top-notch cultivators? It's just that forcefully increasing a creature's providence is also a great loss to me. Let me give you an example. Even without deducting the portion in your hands, the power of providence that Lei Qiusheng has sacrificed to me this time is not as much as what I've invested in you. Besides, other than an existence like you who has been chosen by me, I won't casually increase the luck of other creatures. As the ruler of a country, Lei Qiusheng is willing to use the country's luck to make a deal. I'll definitely earn more than him in this exchange. Only by breaking even can I maintain the current situation and create a better situation. Therefore, you'd better put away those thoughts that shouldn't exist. It's still the same old saying. You have to know your limits even when you're dreaming. Although it did not hear Lin Yuan scolding the system for being shameless, it had been with Lin Yuan for almost 2 years. The system understood Lin Yuan's character very well. The moment Lin Yuan suddenly fell silent, it continuously displayed words to defend itself. It even guessed the bold thought that flashed through Lin Yuan's mind. All right, I got it. Lin Yuan muttered again and increased the power of incense offerings to Lei Qiusheng. The incense offerings on the interface kept jumping, dropping from 200,000 to 50,000. Only then did Lin Yuan stop feeding Lei Qiusheng. In any case, the incense offerings were in his hands. As long as he did not deduct too much, there would be no problem. Chapter 624. Level 5 of the Void Realm. That was Lei Qiusheng's current level. Lei Qiusheng slowly opened his eyes after sensing that the feedback from Lin Yuan was getting lesser and lesser. He spat out a mouthful of turbid air after absorbing all of it. One could vaguely see the lightning flashing in Lei Qiusheng's eyes, as if there were tens of thousands of thunderbolts flashing in his eyes. While I've improved a lot, I still feel that it's not as good as the last time. Lei Qiusheng looked at Lin Yuan with burning eyes. There was obvious doubt in his eyes. Of course, he did not think that Lin Yuan had taken away his share. If going from the airborne realm to the heavenly star realm was the step of transforming spiritual qi into vigor, then going from the heavenly star realm to the void realm was the step of increasing a cultivator's sensitivity to all energy in the world. It would allow a cultivator to better absorb spirit qi that was beneficial to them and get rid of the useless energy. Therefore, he could clearly feel that compared to the last feedback, his gains this time were at least several times greater. It was just that the strengthening of his body did not seem to be as good as the last time. Instead, there was a strange feeling in his body. He asked not because he was greedy, but because he wanted to get some useful information from Lin Yuan so that he could decide how to proceed with the next deal. Of course it's different. My deal is to extract the power of the origin from your offerings and give you your share. The last time you made a deal with me, you were dealing with some powerful treasures. After extracting the power of the origin, not only did it increase your cultivation, but it also improved your physical fitness. This time, you used the remaining fate of the Shenwu dynasty to make a deal with me. The power I gave you could not improve your physical fitness, but it improved your fate power. This is a good thing, but at the same time, it is also a waste. If you focus on improving your fate power, it will bring you greater benefits. If you sacrifice a lot of monster cores next time to focus on improving your cultivation, it would be a good choice. Sacrificing the flesh of monsters can also focus on improving your physical fitness. Of course, the decision is still up to you. You can also exchange other things from me other than your cultivation. But I'll still give you a piece of advice. As your cultivation gets stronger, the benefits this kind of feedback can bring you will become smaller and smaller. If you continue to use those things to fool me, you won't get much in return. It's the same principle as when a cultivator's realm gets higher, most of the spiritual items will gradually lose their effect. If you want to improve quickly, it's better to trade things that are good for your cultivation. Lin Yuan had no intention of hiding anything. Although he was the middleman, he could only get the power of the incense on the data panel. But as his own uniqueness diagram, Lin still hoped that Lei Qiusheng could live a little longer, so it was necessary to show him a path. Thank you for your advice, Dragon King. Lei Qiusheng cupped his hands towards Lin Yuan, not hiding the disappointment on his face. To an emperor like him who carried out his tyranny to the extreme, the so-called luck was nothing but a mysterious thing. Back then, it was said that the Jiao clan had been passed down for thousands of years, and the myriad sword dynasty's luck was boundless. But didn't he still succeed in stealing the dynasty? Even now, the remaining members of the Jiao clan were almost finished. Compared to that kind of illusory thing, he still hoped to improve his own strength. Only then would he have a greater chance of survival in the upcoming chaotic world. However, his current cultivation was not bad. The shadow beside him was originally at the second level of the Void Realm. Because of his outstanding talent, and because he was castrated by the elders of the Lei Qiusheng when he was young, he lost a lot of distracting thoughts. Later on, after Lei Qiusheng ascended the throne, he was restricted by the top forces and could not break through. Therefore, 80% of the cultivation resources that were offered to Lei Qiusheng fell into the hands of the shadow. With the shadow's cultivation advancing by leaps and bounds, there was the eunuch Tai who guarded the imperial capital and suppressed countless thieves. To put it bluntly, even for the children that he thought highly of, Lei Qiusheng gave more cultivation resources than the shadow and Shenlin Jun. First, because the emperor realm was restricted, there was no need to do so. Second, because Lei Qiusheng did not want his children to have too much strength. That would shake his authority as the emperor. However, the shadow, who was extremely talented, had very few desires, and had a large amount of cultivation resources, stopped at the second level of the Void Realm. Every step after that was extremely difficult. After dozens of years, the shadow still could not reach the third level of the Void Realm. On the other hand, Lei Qiusheng had only been at the northern frontier for 2 months, and his cultivation had soared to the fifth level of the Void Realm. Using the word monster to describe this kind of cultivation speed could be considered an insult. What was there to be dissatisfied with? After sending off Lei Qiusheng, Lin Yuan stood and stretched. Then he sat back down and slowly said to a corner of the garden, "If you have something to say, come out and say it. While you are at it, think of a reasonable explanation for yourself." Even Li Zhong does not dare to listen to these things. You have been hiding there all this time. Do you think I am blind? As he spoke, Luo Su flashed out with an embarrassed expression. Chapter 625. Luo Su shook his head gently and said in a low voice, "I don't have any improper thoughts. I only hope that my injuries can be healed. It would be best if my hidden illness could be removed as well. For this, I can pay any price." The pain of the purgatory fire burning the heart was not something that everyone could bear. Even with Lin Yuan's help, the pain was increasing day by day. Even Luo Su himself did not know how long he could maintain his rationality without completely falling into the demonic path. Recently, the embroidered uniform guard's style of conduct had become more and more ruthless, causing many people to complain. It was all because the evil aura in his heart was getting heavier and heavier. As for what Lin Yuan said, Luo Su naturally wanted to kill all the competitors and become the only head of the secret service in the northern frontier. However, he was also very clear that neither Lin Yuan nor Li Zhong wanted such an existence to appear. After Sherdong's fall, people like Yi Balan and Zhang Xiuzhu appeared one after another. One could see the deep meaning of Lin Yuan's plan. It was not that Lin Yuan was afraid of Luo Su, but he knew very well that a powerful intelligence department could breed a terrifying monster. Although Lu Bing, one of the 3 dukes and 3 orphans of the Jiajing dynasty, had died a good death, the Lu family had taken over the maritime trade at that time. Even Wang Ji, the ship owner of the 5 Peaks, who was known as the King of the Clear Sea, used to work for the Lu family. After that, there was Wei Zhongxian, the supervisor of the East Factory during Emperor Tianqi's time. He was a terrifying existence who called himself 9,000 years old. It was difficult to distinguish whether he was a traitor or a traitor. He suppressed the civil and military officials in the imperial court, but he spent a lot of money to supply the military in Liaodong. Later, Emperor Chongzhen listened to the Donglin gang and killed Wei Zhongxian. The border army in Liaodong collapsed quickly, drawing an incomplete end to the Ming dynasty. Lin Yuan was now in control of the northern frontier. If he did nothing, he would create similar monsters in the future. Whether they were loyal or traitorous, it would cause a very bad impact. Therefore, it was best to have multiple checks and balances, which was the best and most stable way. "I have no choice." Lin Yuan raised his eyelids and said without hesitation. No matter what Luo Su's shortcomings were, it was undeniable that he was a very powerful character. On the surface, he was evenly matched with Sherdong, but he secretly kept a close watch on Sherdong. Even the various higher-ups, aristocratic families, subordinate organizations of the northern frontier, and even Li Zhong were all under Luo Su's surveillance. Later, when Lin Yuan returned to power, even the mobilization of the Blackwater Army was within Luo Su's expectations. If such an existence was not kept in check, it would become a huge problem sooner or later. Not to mention that the purgatory fire poison was something that Lin Yuan couldn't deal with for the time being. Even if he had the ability to deal with it, he wouldn't do it. After all, no matter how ferocious a dog was, it would still be under the control of its owner. However, once the leash was released, it would cause many irreversible consequences. This subordinate doesn't understand. Please enlighten me, Dragon King. Why would the Dragon King rather make a deal with an outsider than? Luo Su knelt on the ground and kowtowed expressionlessly. His forehead was close to the ground, and the dust had dirted the bandages on his face. Lin Yuan huffed coldly and directly interrupted Luo Su. In a cold voice, he said, "You also know it's a deal? What do you have to trade with me? Information from the brocade guard? Or the various treasures that appeared in the Ministry of Works? What item do you have that wasn't given to you by the northern frontier? Taking my item to trade with me, you really know how to do business, Commander Luo." Lin Yuan's voice was cold, and the dragon's might mixed with murderous intent was released. In an instant, the temperature dropped by dozens of degrees. Even someone of Luo Su's profound cultivation couldn't help but shiver. He was indeed a person who had nothing. In the face of Lin Yuan's questioning, he could only be speechless. The commander of the brocade guard? Who in the entire brocade guard was loyal to him? As long as Lin Yuan said a word, there would be people in the brocade guard who wanted his life. If you want to trade, that's fine. Take out something that doesn't belong to the northern frontier. If the value is equal, I can satisfy you with anything. Lin Yuan leaned back in his chair and slowly closed his eyes. He said coldly, give all the power of the brocade guard to Zhang Shuzhu. You will first receive your punishment and be confined for 3 months. Come find me when you've thought things through. That's all, you may leave. Luo Su sighed. Several times, he wanted to say something but stopped. In the end, he obediently got up and cupped his hands in salute to Lin Yuan, who was resting with his eyes closed. Step by step, he pushed into the shadows and hid his tracks. So what if he was extremely unwilling? Without Lin Yuan to help him suppress the purgatory fire poison, he could become a monster without self at any time. Moreover, everything he had now was given to him by the northern frontier. Whether it was power, martial arts, or even the various treasures on his body, they were all given to him by the northern frontier. What right did a person who had everything have to make a trade with others? After confirming that Luo Su was far away, the divine sense attached to the puppet quickly left, and the consciousness returned to the main body. Host, Lin Yuan. Title, Devourer of the Nation's Fate. Status, Blackwater Abyssal Flood Dragon, Mutated, Realm, 28/30th Speed, 70,000 Attack, 110000 Defense, 80,000 plus 16,000 Demonic Power, 17,000 Assignable Attribute Points, 6,000 Talent, Omitted Martial Arts, Omitted Skills, omitted other than the attribute points that had skyrocketed because of the Devouring of the Nation's Fate projection. Lin Yuan's interface didn't change much. Only his skill proficiency increased a little. There were no skills or talents that had advanced. There was only an additional title and a new talent. Lin Yuan sank his consciousness into the 2 new things that had appeared. Name, Devourer of the Nation's Fate. Type, Title Effect. When wearing this title, the host can devour the nation's fate power of other dynasty through methods including but not limited to direct war and economic suppression. The nation's fate power that is devoured can be used to strengthen one's own force or be converted into attribute points to strengthen oneself. Each point of nation's fate power can be exchanged for 1,000 attribute points for the host. Note 1, only one title can be worn. Only the title worn will have an effect. Note 2, when you steal the nation's fate power of others, others can also steal your nation's fate power in a similar way. Note 3, when you have a title, the title can't be empty. You can only change it when you obtain other titles. This is to prevent certain titles from causing huge losses during special times. This new title made Lin Yuan's eyes light up, but it also made him frown. He could steal the nation's fate power of others to strengthen his own force. This was not something that anyone could do. The nation's fate power represented how far the dynasty could go. As long as the nation's fate power was sufficient, it was not impossible to create a celestial dynasty where even the newborns had high cultivation. However, if all the nation's fate power was used up like Lei Qiusheng, then the dynasty's demise would be imminent. Obviously, this nation's fate devourer title was a double-edged sword. Chapter 626. Name, True Dragon, Son of Heaven. Type, Talent. Skill Effect. This skill can consume the power of incense to provide a permanent buff to a living being, greatly increasing their basic attributes and luck. Note 1, this skill can only be used on characters with dragon aura, namely officials, royal relatives, and emperors. Note 2, the luck and basic attributes increased by this skill depend on the power of incense that the host injects into it. Note 3, this skill can only be used within the host's territory. Outside the territory, the effect will be reduced by half. If it exceeds 15 days, the skill will be ineffective. Note 4, once the skill is used, the power of incense will not be refunded. The new talent skill made Lin Yuan's eyes flash with a bright light. In his previous life, the old era believed that the emperor was a true dragon that descended from the heavens, so he was called the True Dragon, Son of Heaven. Although it was vague in his previous life, there was a fundamental difference between the Son of Heaven and the True Dragon, Son of Heaven. It was similar to Yingzheng, who was inextricably linked to the alien race of the classic of mountains and seas. Even the existence called the ancestral dragon in the future was the real true dragon, Son of Heaven. The so-called Son of Heaven was just the abbreviation for the Son of Heaven. It was the human emperor that was supported by the heavenly Tao. Although the two had the same authority, they were in completely different camps. Although he was directly classified as part of the alien race of the classic of mountains and seas, which was one step away from Lin Yuan's human identity, this skill was indeed a good one. Moreover, there was no limit to the number of times it could be used. As long as there was enough incense, Lin Yuan could even designate a living being to become an almost undefeatable existence in his territory. You're really a king profiteer. After pondering for a moment, Lin Yuan scolded in a muffled voice. It was not easy to get a large amount of incense, but the system did not seem to have any intention of letting Lin Yuan save the incense. It was meaningless for him to keep this kind of thing on him. He could not be like a miser and watch the incense grow more and more, right? A genius before he grew up was no different from a piece of trash. Resources that were not put into use were no different from trash. The system obviously did not intend to respond to Lin Yuan's heartfelt abuse. It did not even bother to display a word, as if it had gone into hibernation. A black flood dragon tail gently flapped twice in the lake water. A nearly 100 meters tall, burly silhouette slowly walked through the mist created by Lin Yuan's stirring of the lake water and casually threw the 100-meter-tall mountain aside. Then, an ape's face, which was covered in hideous wounds, reached out to Lin Yuan and said in a muffled voice, "Batu of the Stone-Shaped Clan greets Dragon King." Although Batu had a hidden illness in his body and was unable to raise his cultivation level, after cultivating a large amount of human body refining techniques, Batu's current basic attributes could be said to be quite shocking. Moreover, other than demonic chi, there was also true chi in his body. Ordinary wisdom demonic beasts would not be able to last more than 10 moves against Batu. "Batu, do you remember the oath we made when we first met?" Lin Yuan raised his huge head, and a pair of different colored eyes fell on Batu's. Lin Yuan did not open his mouth, but he controlled the sound of the air around him to form such a sentence when the air around him vibrated. Batu remembers. The Dragon King said that he would heal Batu's injuries within 2 years. Batu nodded and a faint smile appeared on his hideous face. Right now, Batu was only at the 8th level of the Spirit Awakening realm. His intelligence was at most equivalent to that of a 10-year-old human child. If a human were to talk to Lin Yuan like this, they would probably tactfully express that they had forgotten. Not to mention the difference in combat strength, just the difference of 2 large realms was not something that could be smoothed out by dual cultivation. Adding on the fact that Lin Yuan had the increasingly powerful northern frontier as his subordinates, let alone Batu, even Mendu, Na Qin, and other powerful demonic beasts might not be able to do anything to Lin Yuan. Therefore, it did not matter if Lin Yuan did not fulfill the agreement. Even if the system imprisoned Lin Yuan according to the punishment for failure, so what? With Lin Yuan's current defense, even if Batu used all his strength, he might not be able to break Lin Yuan's scales. I said before that demonic beasts do not lie to demonic beasts. Right now, there are only a few months left until our agreement of 2 years ends. I will soon leave the Hengduan Mountains for the Endless Sea and might not be able to make it back before the end of the year. Therefore, I have decided to heal your injuries in advance. Lin Yuan's different-colored eyes flashed and he said in a deep voice, "Batu, are you willing to worship me as a god and become my most loyal believer? Are you willing to walk the world and proclaim the might of the Northern Frontier's god?" Lin Yuan, who had the loyalty model, knew that the people of the Northern Frontier were loyal to him. Those people were dissatisfied with him because they did not want to rely too much on the power of the system and because there were many talents among those who were dissatisfied with him. Using the method of checks and balances to make them work for him was not a bad choice. However, this did not mean that Lin Yuan had forgotten about this function of the system. Looking at his own territory, only Mendu, Na Qin, Batu, Wanyu, and Li Zhong had more than 80 loyalty points. Among them, Batu's loyalty was maxed out. He was an existence that would not even frown if Lin Yuan wanted him to die. Batu is willing. Batu greets my god. Batu knelt and kowtowed. The sincerity in his tone was something that Lei Qiusheng, an old fox who was good at scheming, could not compare to. Batu, whose loyalty was maxed out, had turned into a believer. He was Lin Yuan's #1 fanatic believer. Compared to a believer like Lei Qiusheng, he was naturally better. Just from the amount of incense that he produced every day, a fanatic could produce 3 to 5 points a day, while a normal believer could only produce 1 point a day. This was enough to determine who was better. Since you've offered your loyalty to me, I'll use my divine power to heal your hidden injuries. As his voice fell, a white light shot out from the gray scale on Lin Yuan's forehead and directly entered Bada's body. In the next moment, Bada's aura sharply increased, directly jumping from the 8th level of the Spirit Awakening realm to the 3rd level of the Wisdom Awakening realm. The Berserk aura spread out in all directions, startling a large number of beasts and birds. The white light was the power of incense used by a god to directly bless a believer. It did not have any additional attributes and could only be used to satisfy a believer's wish. The amount of incense used was determined by the strength of the wish. Healing Bada's injuries only cost 30 points of incense. In the past, this would have been a large sum, but to the current Lin Yuan, it was nothing more than a drizzle. What made him pleasantly surprised was that Bada had continuously broken through to the next realm. Because of his hidden injuries, he was unable to break through to the next realm. However, the years of hard work had not been in vain. Once that unsurpassable bottleneck was broken through, nothing could stop Bada from breaking through. Even without Lin Yuan, Bada would still become one of the strongest. Chapter 627. Thank you, God, for your blessings. Batu is extremely grateful. Batu kowtowed again. His strength was much more terrifying than before, even causing a small earthquake. If it were not for the green leaf water lotus gathering spiritual energy and tempering it day and night in this area of Lin Yuan's lair, many creatures would have been unlucky because of this. Immediately, Lin Yuan's mind moved, and a golden light descended from the sky, directly enveloping Batu, whose muscles were constantly bulging and his body was constantly growing. A thought flashed through his mind, and the power of incense was stirred again. The power of incense, which was originally more than 40,000, directly dropped by 1 digit to 9,973 before it ended. Boom! An incomparably ferocious aura once again spread out in all directions. This time, there was no earth-shaking phenomenon. With just a light sweep of the aura, hundreds of 300-meter-tall giant trees collapsed and scattered in all directions. A large number of beasts and birds that couldn't escape in time were crushed into fine powder. Even Lin Yuan could feel a strong sense of threat when facing the current Batu, as if this ferocious beast were to go berserk, even he might be directly torn to pieces. With 40,000 incense power, the power of the true dragon sun could be said to be terrifying. Lin Yuan, who had always been known to be invincible among those of the same level, actually felt that he wasn't a match for a level 3 intelligence perception demonic beast when he was only a level 8 mountain lord. Ding! Congratulations, host, for completing the mission Demonic Beast's Oath. You have received the eternal loyalty of the demonic beast Batu. Ding! Congratulations, host, Batu's loyalty is permanently fixed at full value. Ding! This creature's loyalty to host has reached full level. Host can confer it as a subordinate god and receive the power of a subordinate god. This creature will receive a large amount of benefits when engaging in activities in the domain of divine authority. The 2 consecutive system notifications awakened Lin Yuan from his shock, and what followed next was uncontrollable ecstasy. A monster. A true monster. Yet, he had an unwavering loyalty to him. Batu, from now on, you are the god of war and conquest in the Northern Frontier god system, the first subordinate god under my command. After receiving the system notification, Lin Yuan didn't hesitate to confer it as one of his subordinate gods, and said in a deep voice, you can develop your own believers and clan on your own. I will let Li Zhong announce your new identity, one of the 36 celestial gods of the Northern Frontier, war god Batu. Thank you, Divine King, for your gift. Batu kowtowed for the 3rd time, and his tone became more humble and respectful. As a subordinate god conferred by Lin Yuan through the system, Batu didn't need to explore the so-called path of God, but was directly instilled with a large amount of experience and relevant knowledge by the system. In addition, at the moment, Bada had just entered intelligence, and his nature had yet to mature, but he was already full of divinity. As the divine king of the Northern Frontier God system, Lin Yuan didn't lose this divine right when he distributed his divine right to the subordinate gods under him. It was equivalent to the operation of a group leader setting up an administrator, giving them absolute management rights under him. However, Lin Yuan still had the ability to use this divine right or deprive others of their divine right at any time. This privilege would continue until Lin Yuan fell and the position of divine king was empty. Only then would the subordinate gods under him be qualified to compete and fight for the position of divine king. Although Batu, who had been conferred as a subordinate god, wouldn't continue to provide incense power to Lin Yuan like a fanatic believer, not all gods would choose to walk the path of ancient gods like Lin Yuan. Batu, who had been instilled with experience by the system, was more inclined to cultivate believers and harvest incense, and a third of all the profits that belonged to Batu would be offered to Lin Yuan, the divine king. From a small fixed income to a large amount of long-term investment, it was similar to the difference between Yi Bao and a wealth management fund. Of course, the divine king didn't have absolute control over his subordinate gods. When another powerful god system appeared, his subordinate gods might give up their divine position and divine right in the Northern Frontier god system and lead their believers to defect to the other god system. This kind of behavior would often cause a war between the two powerful god systems. However, judging from the structure of the Tianwu continent, there was obviously no second god system other than Lin Yuan. Those Yin gods whose physical bodies had perished and who continued to live by absorbing incense power were obviously not on the same level as gods like Lin Yuan and Badu, who had physical bodies. I will leave the Northern Frontier for a period of time. You will be in charge of the Northern Frontier Prince's mansion. Once something happens that Li Zhong can't solve, you will personally appear to solve it. However, you must remember, no matter what, do not leave the Northern Frontier territory. If there are really troublesome opponents, temporarily stop them in a stalemate with the goal of stopping losses. Wait for me to come back and deal with them. When Bada's eyes regained clarity, Lin Yuan said in a low voice. War god Batu obeys the divine king's orders. Bada knelt on one knee and reached out his hand to hit his chest heavily. About an hour later. After contacting Li Zhong through the puppet, Badu's new identity was announced to the entire Northern Frontier. After most of the spies lurking in the Northern Frontier sent the news back to their factions, what they received in return was a contemptuous smile from the higher-ups. They felt that Lin Yuan seemed to have gone crazy. He had only been conferred the title of a god of the Northern Frontier by the Shenwu dynasty, which was about to perish, and he felt that he was really a godlike existence. Conferring the title of a god? How much change could a title bring? If others called you a god, would you really be a god? However, regarding Bada's new identity, the eyes of many ambitious people in the Northern Frontier lit up. In particular, those demon beasts and cultivators who had rushed to Lin Yuan's side under the banner of the ancient demon court, such as Kagura, began to make their own plans. Although Lin Yuan did not confer the title of a god to other gods, Badu was only one of the 36 heavenly dipper gods. In other words, there were at least 35 empty spots among Lin Yuan's god subordinates. If he could obtain one of them, how glorious would it be when the demon court recovered in the future? Some were envious, some coveted, some sneered. All of these had nothing to do with Lin Yuan. Because at this moment, Lin Yuan had quietly embarked on a new journey. His main body resided in a beast pouch made by the Ministry of Works and hung on the puppet's waist, while his divine sense was attached to the puppet's body. He rowed a small boat south along the Wei River. Through the makeup technology developed by the Ministry of Works, the puppet's skin color was covered by paint. It was no longer as lifeless as before. After changing into a black robe without any complicated patterns and bringing enough dry food, water, and a few spare black robes, Lin Yuan left the Northern Frontier under Li Zhong's gaze. Of course, he did not travel alone, because the puppet had brought 2 beast pouches with it. The other one contained the blood descendant of the Dragon King of the West Sea Dragon Palace, Ao Qian. However, after being put into the beast pouch, she was cut off from the outside world, so there was no need to chat to relieve boredom. Chapter 628. The young man's sword had not been properly equipped, and he was already in Jianghu. This description of Lin Yuan's trip was obviously not appropriate. Lin Yuan did not see any Jianghu, only a purgatory on earth. Due to the internal strife of the Shenwu dynasty, and the sky demon's continued torment, there was almost no life to be found along the Wei River. The bustling docks, towns, and villages that were originally built on the banks of the Wei River were now in ruins. Every short distance, Lin Yuan could see all kinds of skeletons crawling on the side of the road. There were humans and monsters, and the air was filled with a pungent smell and miasma. This kind of purgatory on earth lasted until Lin Yuan passed through the central region of the Shenwu dynasty along the Wei River and arrived in the south. Although there were still not many people, at least there were no skeletons and ruins in sight. This area was controlled by the 100 Victories fleet of the Azure River dynasty and the army under the Azure Canopy King Lei Chuming. Even someone as strong as the Sky Demon did not have the ability to break through their blockade when these two sides were prepared. Not to mention that there were many big shots in the sky who belonged to the Guardians of the Heaven's Gate. The boat was stopped by 2 boats. There were about 30 soldiers in total on the 2 ships. They were of average build, standing about 1.6 to 1.7 meters tall. Their cultivation was barely at the mid-level of the airborne realm. The armor they wore was not of the golden style of the Shenwu dynasty. Instead, they wore white armor with green robes. The words, 100 Victories, were engraved on their right armors. While they did not wear banners, their identities were clear to see. There was only one famous general in the Azure River dynasty. He was a figure from the same era as Lei Qiusheng and Yan Xingqi. He had fought with the 2 famous generals of the Wangjian dynasty several times. Relying on the fact that he was undefeated on the river and the boat, he was given the title of Duke of 100 Victories by the Emperor of the Azure River. His territory was convenient for the land along the river, and his army also walked on the Wei River with the banner of 100 Victories. Even though Lei Qiusheng had repeatedly insulted the Duke of Baisheng, saying that Zhao Xiang was unworthy of the title of a famous general, and that as long as they went ashore, any general from the Shenwu dynasty could easily defeat the so-called Baisheng army and the Duke of Baisheng, he did not avoid the fact that once he entered the water, he would only be toyed with by the Duke of Baisheng. This body of water is already under military control. I don't care where you're from. If you try to force your way in, we'll make sure you're buried in the mouths of the Wei River Yao beasts. The leader of the victorious army stepped on Lin Yuan's skiff with a single foot. He gave it a light kick, but the strength he displayed was exceptionally tyrannical. He actually managed to push Lin Yuan's skiff back 3 zhang. Lin Yuan frowned slightly, but he did not act out immediately. Instead, he took out a jade disc from his bosom and said in a deep voice, "I am the Vice President of the Association of the Northern Frontier, Lin Yin. I am under the orders of the Dragon King to send Ao Qian from the West Sea back to the Endless Sea. This is my clearance document." When the captain heard the words Northern Frontier, he frowned. After hesitating for a moment, he waved his hand in disgust and said coldly, "Just because you say you're from the Northern Frontier, you're from the Northern Frontier? During this period of time, there are many sky demons trying to enter the south using the name of the Northern Frontier. I'm too lazy to look at your clearance document. If you really want to go over, you have 2 choices. Either let us use the magic sealing bottle to check, or let the Ministry of Rights of the Northern Frontier communicate with us directly. Now, scram." The Northern Frontier was growing stronger day by day. Everyone knew that the Northern Frontier was not to be trifled with. If they could avoid it, they would not easily provoke it. It had already become a mutual understanding among the 6 empires. "I'm already here. Little General, you want me to go back with just a few words? Isn't that a little unreasonable?" Lin Yuan grinned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Although the Azure River Empire was surrounded by rivers on both sides, it was not like there was no land route to speak of. From the steep mountain path of the Hengduan mountain range, one could directly reach the other party's territory. However, Lin Yuan did not choose that route. It was because going all the way south from the Wei River would lead directly to the endless sea. However, going by land would waste more time. Even if he crossed the Azure River Empire's territory and reached the seaside, it would be extremely difficult to get a ship that could go out to sea. All the ships of the Azure River Empire belonged to the Empire. No private forces were allowed to build ships. Once there were signs of it, the Azure River Empire would immediately extinguish it. After all, only by having the ships in their hands could they ensure that the enemy would not come ashore undetected and directly launch a surprise attack on the important cities of the Azure River Empire. Just like what Lei Qiusheng said, even the only famous general of the Azure River Empire was only mediocre in terms of fighting land battles, let alone the other generals who were not even good at naval battles. However, passing the test of the magic sealing bottle was still an unacceptable condition for Lin Yuan. Right now, he was only a strand of divine thought attached to the puppet. Although he wasn't a heavenly demon, he would still be taken away by the magic sealing bottle. Although a strand of divine thought wasn't much of a loss to him, once he lost control of the puppet body, it could directly suffocate his original body in the beast pouch. He didn't know when he would be able to see the light of day again. As for directly revealing his original body, if the Azure River Empire, the Sky Demon Army, and the Southern Rebel Army knew that Lin Yuan had left the northern frontier, even if they did not organize people to surround and kill him, they would not miss this excellent opportunity to attack the northern frontier. Heh, that's easy. The captain grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. He sneered and said, "If you have the ability to pass the test, we can also let you pass. However, I have to remind you. Including the Southern Rebel Army of the Shenwu dynasty, both sides have arranged close to 1 million troops on the Wei River. It is simply a pipe dream for you to pass the test with a small boat like yours." The so-called Great Pass was a battle technique that had a long history in the Azure River Empire. There were countless navy troops in the Azure River Empire, and the conditions for promotion were not based on seniority or achievements. Instead, it was based on the ability to fight in the water. Every soldier could bring as many ships and people as possible. This included the allocation of equipment and the supply of ammunition strictly according to the rules. Then, under the principle of not harming lives, they would face off against another navy that wanted to be promoted. After the two sides faced off on the water, the victor would be resupplied and then directly face off against the assessment fleet sent by the Azure River Navy. If they won twice in a row, they would be promoted successfully. This was similar to the drill in Lin Yuan's previous life. It was the so-called Great Pass. It was also one of the main training methods of the Azure River Navy. However, even if there was a rule of not harming lives, it was inevitable that there would be quite a number of casualties and ships damaged. Therefore, the frequency of the Great Pass was not high. If Lin Yuan wanted to pass the test, he would have to rely on this small boat to face off against the entire Wei River Navy. 1 against 1 million. It would not kill him, but it would not prevent him from sinking ships. If Lin Yuan lost this round, he would have to swim along the Wei River back to the northern frontier. Pass the test? I've heard of it, but I've never played it before. It seems a little interesting. Lin Yuan also smiled, and the cold light in his pitch-black eyes became even sharper. Chapter 629. Ha 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 ha. The captain stomped his feet vigorously as if he had heard a great joke, causing the boat under his feet to constantly tremble, as if it could capsize at any time. His laughter lasted for a full 5 to 6 breaths of time, and only then did he stop abruptly when tears almost came out of his eyes. "Hey, kid, did I hear you wrong? Are you sure you want to play a game of clearing the level with us? You want to fight with over 1 million of us by yourself? Not to mention that we are the invincible victorious army, even if we were to bring over 1 million pigs, you would still be tired of killing them, right?" The captain stopped laughing, but he didn't stop laughing. From his trembling voice and trembling facial muscles, he could laugh out loud again at any time. "I am serious about clearing the level, but..." Lin Yuan didn't seem to care about the others' laughter at all. However, the temperature around him dropped by dozens of degrees, and the river water on both sides of the boat faintly condensed into white frost. Lin Yuan said with a cold face, "Who told you that I am alone?" As his voice fell, the entire Wei River surged. Countless aquatic monsters slowly popped their heads out, and pairs of flickering eyes fell on the captain's face. Countless aquatic monsters gathered together to form a killing intent that covered the sky and covered the earth. In almost an instant, the smile on the captain's face directly froze. He looked at Lin Yuan in disbelief, as if wondering what kind of god this person was. Due to its special geographical environment, the Qingjiang Empire was considered the most friendly empire to the demonic beasts among the 7 empires. Whether it was the Dragon Palace in the Endless Sea or the Demonic Beast Palace in the Hengduan Mountains, they all had a good relationship with the Qingjiang Empire. Even though the demonic beasts in the Wei River often fought with the Qingjiang Navy, many of the Beast Kings had a good relationship with the Qingjiang Navy. As his voice fell, the monsters of the Wei River all came out. It seemed that none of the Beast Kings were willing to give face to the victorious army. When had they ever seen such a scene? The captain stretched out his hand and patted his cheek, softening his stiff expression. Then he said with a heavy face, "To be able to make the monsters of the Wei River give you face, no wonder you can safely travel south on a small boat. It seems like you are really someone from the northern frontier." "What do you mean?" Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows, somewhat puzzled by the other party's sudden change in attitude. "If you had shown this earlier or asked the Wei River Beast Kings to mediate on your behalf, we would have let you go. However, we can't do that now. In our Azure River Empire, as long as you say you want to clear the stage, no matter what the reason is, whether you are willing or not, you have to finish this round before it counts. The rules are set, and it's hard to change them." The captain spread out his hands and said in a deep voice, "You wait here. I will go back and report. The next time we meet, we will directly attack you and these demonic beasts. But don't worry, we will not take your life, nor will we sink your ship. Next, either you beat us until we can't stand up, or we beat you until you can't stand up. No matter what the result is, we will let you go." "Thank you." Lin Yuan nodded slightly and did not object. Every place had its own rules. Just like in the northern frontier, no matter if it was humans or demonic beasts, as long as the Azure River Empire was involved in clearing the stage, as long as they opened their mouths, they had to finish it. Rules were set by humans. They could be changed, but they had to be respected. Only if you respected other people's rules, would they respect your rules. About 10 minutes later, the captain did not directly return to say anything to Lin Yuan. However, in Lin Yuan's vision, there were hundreds of boats, and every one of them was filled with the 100 Victories Navy. However, Lin Yuan also saw that the 100 Victories Navy had changed to blunt weapons. The arrows that were drawn from the quiver had been chopped off from the shoulders and replaced with round stones. Although it would be very painful if it hit a person's body, it was not fatal. As long as it didn't hit the eyes or other places, it would not be a problem. Further away, the medium-sized boats were also ready to set off. There were also large boats like the turreted boats. However, the cannoneers on the boats had all retreated into the cabins, and the musketeers were nowhere to be seen. Most of them were armed with crossbows. Obviously, when the other party said that they would not kill, they were serious. "You are all natives of Wei River. Naturally, you know the rules of clearing the stage. This time, you are not allowed to kill. Overturn their boats and send them back to the shore. If anyone breaks the rules, don't say that I am not merciful." After seeing the other party's reaction, Lin Yuan also gave a few instructions to the demonic beasts around him with a serious expression. Shortly after, the demonic beasts rushed out. Under the push of Lin Yuan's demonic chi, the boat was like a rocket. It had no intention of dodging the victorious army's boats and directly crashed into the enemy's encirclement. However, the first batch of boats that came out did not even have the qualifications to approach Lin Yuan. Almost all of them were surrounded by the demonic beasts and began to collide with each other. The boats were constantly shaking. Those that were able to stand firm were fine, but those that were not were directly thrown into the Wei River. Under such conditions, they could not get close to Lin Yuan, so the value of blunt weapons was naturally not great. Even those archers did not expect Lin Yuan to advance instead of retreating. They did not even have time to shoot an arrow before they were hit by the demonic beasts. They could not even do basic aiming. They could only barely grab the places on the boat that they could grab to ensure that they would not be overturned and fall into the water. Lin Yuan did not stop and continued to charge forward. The victorious army's generals were originally grimacing in pain when they saw their soldiers fall into the water. However, in the next moment, they saw the Wei River's demonic beasts pick up the victorious army's soldiers and throw them one by one onto the shore. Only then did they let out a sigh of relief. They're all waiting for the food to be served. They're almost in your face, and you're still not shooting? The general slapped a dumbfounded soldier aside and knocked an arrow on his bow, firing 3 arrows at once. Whoosh! 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 Lin Yuan's lips curled up as he listened to the sound of the arrows piercing through the air. When he looked up, he saw a dense mass of arrows bearing down on him. Although these arrows were not fatal, it was clear that if he did not hit any part of the body, these arrows would hurt a lot. And when the number of arrows reached a certain point, the boat might even sink. Whoosh! Lin Yuan exhaled a breath of white air. A sparkling and translucent ice shield appeared in front of the boat. The aquatic demonic beasts also continued to release their innate abilities. A large number of water-washing techniques rose up to block the arrows for Lin Yuan. The remaining arrows also hit the ice shield with tinkling sounds, and then fell powerlessly into the Wei River and were washed away. Isn't this a violation of the rules? The general sucked in a breath of cold air. Chapter 630. A large number of arrows were shot out, but they didn't even touch the opponent. How embarrassing. He even felt that the Azure River Navy's hundreds of years of reputation on the Wei River would be ruined because of this battle. The general drew his bow personally and gathered his chi on the arrow through his hands. Whoosh! The arrow left his hand and pierced through the countless demonic beasts' water-cleansing technique as if it was paper. It didn't seem to be obstructed at all. The arrow slammed into the ice shield, but the effect wasn't ideal. Although it didn't fall directly into the Wei River like the previous arrow, it only penetrated half an inch into the ice shield. Damn! The general couldn't help but curse again. This arrow was already shot with all his strength. Although he used an ordinary stone arrow, unless he used the special arrows of the victorious army, the effect would be the same if he used an ordinary arrow. He still couldn't break through the layer of ice shield. Moreover, that would be breaking the rules. In the Azure River Empire, breaking the rules of passing through a checkpoint would result in severe punishment. Even the royal family would lose their lives, let alone a deputy general from a humble background. The first checkpoint set up by the victorious army did not stop Lin Yuan. Even all the countermeasures made by the victorious army were ignored by Lin Yuan. The small boat under Lin Yuan's feet, which was weak and pitiful in the eyes of the victorious army, did not even leave a mark on it. Soon, the small boat was already in front of the general's ship. It was like a black arrow, and in about 2 breaths, it would completely break through the ship that hadn't formed a battle and reach the next checkpoint. Hey, kid! The general looked at Lin Yuan, who was about to rush in front of him, and shouted, I have already signaled to the fleet behind. Your ice shield is too much of a violation, so the fleet behind will use catapults, but they will only fill them with stones. Don't misunderstand. Thank you for telling me. Lin Yuan cupped his fists at the general. Demonic chi erupted, and the speed of the boat increased by 30%. It turned into a black shadow and directly pierced through the first checkpoint. The general took off his helmet and touched his bald head. He cursed, it's so embarrassing today. I'm the first deputy general of the victorious army, but I can't even stop a small boat. Old Zhao will scold me to death later. Due to the rules of clearing the level, this battle was fought with their hands and feet tied. However, the fact remained that they were unable to stop the enemy. The warships were unable to form a blockade, and were unable to stop the enemy's advance. The attacks of the archers on the medium-sized warships were directly ineffective. It was as though they were burning money to shoot at the Wei River. Before the warships behind them could complete their preparations, they had already been defeated. With such a battle record, not to mention the victorious army, even an ordinary Qing River Navy deputy general would be scolded to the point that he could not take care of himself. He might not even be able to keep his helmet. The general shuddered at the thought, and a cold smirk appeared on his face. But then again, this is good. I hope that kid can continue to win. I've already bought enough time for them. Compared to me, they can still use catapults. If they still can't stop that freakish kid, they'll be more embarrassed than I am. Logically speaking, when it came to embarrassing things, the more people there were, the better. Otherwise, if the entire victorious army laughed at him, he would not be able to continue. However, if the people behind him were to be fully prepared and still failed to stop that kid, then they would be even more embarrassed than him. By then, it was hard to say who would be the laughing stock. Lin Yuan did not think about what the general was thinking, because he had already passed the first checkpoint. Before he was able to catch his breath, he saw rocks coming at him from all directions. Rocks of such scale were not something that ordinary cultivators could take on. Even if they were not like those kinds of projectiles that were engraved with formations or mixed with special metals, such a scale was something that even airborne realm cultivators would not have the guts to take on head-on. They could only rely on their body movements to avoid the enemy's attack. However, there were rules to clearing the level. No matter how the fight went, as long as the opponent was forced to abandon the ship, then it was considered a victory. Lin Yuan looked around with a cold expression. Although he easily passed through the first level, not all the demonic beasts could follow him. Just like the battleships that were intercepted by the demonic beasts behind would continue to be intercepted by the navy of the first level. The demonic beasts that were not strong enough had no hope of continuing to help Lin Yuan. Forget it, it's not a real confrontation between two armies. Even if I fight to the death, as long as I can pass, then it's considered a victory. Lin Yuan opened his mouth and said something as if he was talking to himself. However, at the same time that he said this, Lin Yuan also made up his mind. When he returned to the northern frontier, he had to train the navy. Otherwise, even if he had the Wei River, he would still have to rely on the embarrassing fortifications along the river. Moreover, the Qinjiang dynasty would be included in Lin Yuan's territory in the future. If Lin Yuan wanted to cross the river, he would have to personally lead a large number of aquatic monsters and support the northern frontier army through the Hengduan Mountains. He could easily wipe out the military forces of the Qinjiang dynasty, which were known as water dragons. However, that obviously would not work. In the end, Lin Yuan was just a monster. The 6 dynasties could tolerate the existence of the northern frontier regime, but they could not just stand by and watch a monster like Lin Yuan do whatever he wanted. If Lin Yuan relied on the power of monsters to fight with the Qinjiang dynasty, the remaining 5 dynasties would definitely not sit by and watch. After all, no one wanted to become the next Qinjiang dynasty. Moreover, if that happened, the Qinjiang dynasty's territory would also be in chaos after being occupied. In order to avoid all these dangers, they could only rely on the northern frontier to crush the Qinjiang dynasty and use the navy to defeat their navy. This way, not only would they not be mocked by the other 5 dynasties, it would also reduce the resistance of the people of the Qinjiang dynasty against the northern frontier. After all, the Qinjiang navy was like the divine martial heavy steppe army. They were the face of the dynasty and also their last dignity. If they were unable to defeat the northern frontier army, even if there were ambitious people who wanted to cause trouble, those cowardly ones would obediently tuck their tails between their legs and behave themselves. Thinking up to here, Lin Yuan's expression became slightly better. He slowly bent down and gently stroked the surface of the Wei River with his right hand. Boom! A giant made entirely out of ice stood up shakily from the Wei River. With a wave of its crystal-clear hand, it pushed away all the flying rocks in front of it. Then, it walked with earth-shaking steps towards the second stage where the ships were waiting. Passing this stage is a confrontation between 2 armies. No one said that I can only run or defend, right? This time, it's my turn to attack. Lin Yuan stood at the bow of the boat. His voice was not loud, but it strangely covered the majestic waves of the Wei River and transmitted into the second stage's ship formation. Chapter 631. The guardian of the second stage was a young man who looked to be in his 20s. He was wearing a brown martial attire and his upper body was bare. His entire body was covered with muscles, making him look like a standing bear. His long red hair was tied up in a braid and hung in front of his chest. On his back was a pure black tattoo of an evil dragon. Although it wasn't finished, it lacked some spirituality and at the same time, it was also more ferocious. The young man's waist was tied with a hemp rope that had been washed white. On the hemp rope hung 9 red bells. However, the wind and waves on the Wei River seemed to be unable to move the 9 bells at all. The young man stood at the bow of the ship like a statue. If it was not for the slight rise and fall of his chest that proved that he was still alive. When Lin Yuan saw the young man appear at the bow of the ship, he could not help but have a serious expression on his face. According to the information brought by Zhang Xiu, although the Qing River Navy had many capable Navy generals, most of the elites were gathered under the victorious army. In the victorious army, other than the victorious Duke Zhao Xiang, there was only one other person worth paying attention to. The rolling sea evil flood dragon, Ning Tiansheng. He was also known as Tianbao Zai or Yao Ning. Ning Tiansheng was a true genius that was one in a million. He was only 40 years old this year, but he had stepped into the air at the age of 19, achieving the step of eternal youth. In the following 21 years, Ning Tiansheng's cultivation had risen steadily. It was said that he had reached the late stage of the Heaven Dipper realm. Among the cultivators under 60 years old in the Qing River Empire, his strength was enough to rank him in the top 3. However, aptitude and strength were not the most legendary aspects of Ning Tiansheng. It was said that Ning Tiansheng's origin was unknown. Back then, he floated along the Wei River all the way to the Qing River Empire's waters and was adopted by Zhao Xiang. The ferocious Wei River monsters had no intention of killing this infant and even took the initiative to help him kill the unintelligent carnivorous fishes. Therefore, there had always been a rumor that Ning Tiansheng was half human and half demon. He was actually the son of a Wei River monster. Some people said that Ning Tiansheng's luck was so good that even the heavens could not bear to let him die so young. Therefore, people called him Tianbao Zai. Yao Ning referred to Ning Tiansheng's ferocious and ruthless nature. He was usually joking, but once he was on the battlefield, he instantly turned into an emotionless human life harvester. The auxiliary troops he led never surrendered. Whether they were fighting or not, as long as they faced him, they would be completely annihilated. Even if they kneeled and begged for surrender, they would be pushed to the Wei River monsters. This name was Ning Tiansheng's inhuman nature. It was as if he was like a ferocious monster. Then there was the evil dragon tattoo on Ning Tiansheng's back. He did not find someone to tattoo it on later to scare people. He was born with it. When he was young, it was just a small black dot. As his body grew older, it became more and more complete. It only became this tattoo when he became an adult. It was said that after the tattoo appeared, Ning Tiansheng could even walk on the Wei River. Whether the Wei River was calm or the waves surged, it all depended on his thoughts. This was also the origin of the nickname Rolling Sea Evil Dragon. The embroidered uniform guard collected a large amount of information on Ning Tiansheng. They vaguely speculated that Ning Tiansheng might really have the bloodline of a monster. However, no one had ever heard of a monster and a human combining to give birth to an existence like Ning Tiansheng, who looked completely different from a human. There were many kinds of demi-humans, but one that was 100% human was unheard of. However, it was also based on this speculation that the embroidered uniform guard determined that Lin Yuan, who was born as a monster, had the opportunity to subdue Ning Tiansheng. The probability of him becoming the flag bearer of the Northern Frontier Navy was very high. That was why they spent so much effort to study this number 2 figure of the victorious army. Even if Ning Tiansheng was Zhao Xiang's adopted son, it did not matter. because humans and monsters belonged to two races that could not mix. Even in the northern frontier, everyone could only live in harmony. If they wanted to be as close as a family, there was still a long way to go. Therefore, as long as it was confirmed that Ning Tianxing had the bloodline of a monster, even if Zhao Xiang protected him, there would be no place for him in the Azure River dynasty. At this moment, when he saw Ning Tianxing with his own eyes, Lin Yuan grinned for a moment. Only then did he take a deep breath. His face once again returned to its previous serious appearance. Ning Tianxing not only had the bloodline of a monster, he was also a monster in human form. Although he did not know how this senior was able to transform, Lin Yuan's interest in Ning Tianxing was unprecedentedly high. In the chaotic world, there was a saying that monsters could transform. Not only monsters, even plants and spirits could transform. However, in a world like the Tianwu continent, where the martial strength was low, even the monsters that were qualified to guard the gate of heaven and stood at the top of the world did not have this ability. Under such conditions, Lin Yuan naturally did not expect to have the opportunity to transform. Even if there was such a day, it would be when he stepped into the chaotic world and faced the pressure from Hong Jun. However, Ning Tianxing's predecessor, the Rolling Sea Evil Flood Dragon, had achieved this. As a water flood dragon, Lin Yuan could clearly smell the scent of his own kind on Ning Tianxing's body. Of course, Ning Tianxing was definitely not as strong as his, who had been strengthened by the system and whose bloodline had reached 100%. However, his bloodline was definitely at least 80% or 80%. Monsters of this level could be said to be rare. Even some of the monsters in the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, who called themselves the Dragon Clan, did not have such a thick bloodline. Therefore, Lin Yuan guessed that Ning Tianxing's father was most likely a true dragon. Moreover, it was a true dragon from the chaotic world. Otherwise, Ning Tianxing would not have been able to transform. A little interesting. When Ning Tianxing saw the huge ice giant, his expression did not change. He just personally walked to the bow of the ship. However, after seeing Lin Yuan, Ning Tianxing's eyes revealed an obvious look of excitement, as if he had seen an incredible treasure. Monsters of the same kind were very sensitive to the scent of their own kind. Even though Lin Yuan possessed the body of the puppet with his divine thoughts at this moment, in order to make this puppet act like his own arm and perfectly bear the control of his divine thoughts, Lin Yuan also carried the body of the puppet with him and tempered it with his divine thoughts at all times. Not to mention, there were many dragon scales shed by Lin Yuan in the material of the puppet. Stop. You can't do anything to him. Ning Tianxing slowly said to the messenger next to him, I will personally go into the water and play with him. You guys stay on the side and don't interfere. In addition, signal the fleet behind us. If I can't beat him in the water, tell them not to waste their efforts. Just let him go and pass the last test with my foster father. Young Master Tianxing, the guard next to him opened his eyes wide and looked at Ning Tianxing in disbelief. He opened his mouth and tried to dissuade him. I don't like to say the same thing twice. Do you know that? Ning Tianxing turned his head with a smile and looked at the guard next to him. His tone was somewhat playful. Chapter 632. Yes, I'll send the flag signal right away. The bodyguard hurriedly nodded, and a thin layer of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Although Ning Tianxing was Zhao Xiang's adopted son, Zhao Xiang had many wives and concubines, and he had more than 30 sons. Naturally, it wasn't Ning Tianxing's turn to inherit the Zhao family's business and the title of Duke of Victory. However, Ning Tianxing's abilities were outstanding, and he was much stronger than Zhao Xiang's children. That was why he was able to make a name for himself in the victorious army. Ning Tianxing was called Yao Ning by others, so he naturally wasn't an approachable person. Those who dared to argue with Ning Tianxing would most likely appear in the Wei River on the same day and become the food of countless Wei River demon beasts. Even his close subordinates were no exception. If Ning Tianxing were to say the same thing twice, then he would be courting death. Soon, the flag signal was sent out, and the second formation of boats stopped. They even took the initiative to open up a wide area. Ning Tianxing stretched his muscles and jumped off the boat without saying a word. The Wei River, which had been stirred up by the ice giant, calmed down in an instant, as if it had an owner. Ning Tianxing entered the water barefoot. He stepped on the calm surface of the river and walked step by step toward the boat Lin Yuan was on. Ha! Before he could take 10 steps, Ning Tianxing paused. He opened his mouth, took a deep breath, and let out a wild roar. In an instant, the waves on the Wei River surged. A powerful gust of wind turned into a giant blade that slammed into the ice giant. Countless rocks only splashed a layer of ice, and the ice giant was as fragile as a thin sheet of paper. It was instantly shredded into pieces and swept into the Wei River. Not only was the spell broken, but even the Wei River monsters around Lin Yuan began to hesitate. After all, the one standing on the boat was a king, and the one who just entered the water was also a king. How could these shrimp soldiers and crab generals have the right to make a fuss when two kings meet? I don't want to break your boat. Come down and play. Ning Tianxing stood in the same place with a warm smile on his face. If one didn't look at his burly bear-like body, just by looking at his jade-white face and delicate facial features, he didn't look like a flood dragon, but more like a shy boy next door. Okay. Lin Yuan also smiled, stretched out his hand, and waved back the group of monsters around him. Imitating Ning Tianxing, he stepped on the Wei River. At this moment, the raging and whistling wind blades were like a dying person being choked by the throat. The fierce sound subsided. When Lin Yuan stood firmly on his feet, the wind blades instantly collapsed, and the wind waves in front of him stopped at this moment. Lin Yuan and Ning Tian were less than a kilometer apart. With their cultivation and strength, they could easily cross the distance in a few steps. But in this short distance, the Wei River was like two completely different rivers. The waves around Ning Tianxing's raging waves surged to the sky. King meet king meet king. Flood dragon against flood dragon. Even Lin Yuan didn't expect that his first battle in the water after coming to the Qingjiang dynasty's territory would be with a demonic beast in human form. Ning Tianxing giggled. After seeing Lin Yuan enter the water, he stepped barefoot on the water surface, and his figure swept out like a sharp arrow. On the other side, Lin Yuan seemed to have discussed with the other party early on. The movements of the two were completely synchronized until they completely collided. The two figures, one black and one white, almost turned into rainbows and constantly collided. Except for the dull sound of fists hitting flesh, even the wind and waves seemed to have lost their silence. That weird kid can actually walk on water, and his speed is not slower than General Ning's. A captain of the Triumph military force exclaimed in disbelief. Walking on water was not a difficult task. While airborne realm cultivators were unable to truly fly, they were able to stay in the air for a while by relying on their spiritual qi. Cultivators who cultivated water-type methods after reaching the airborne realm would also be able to easily walk on water, but that was just ordinary walking. Like Lin Yuan and Ning Tianxing, who could fight and run on water as if it was flat ground, was already something only heavenly strength realm cultivators could do. However, no matter how powerful a water-type heavenly strength realm cultivator was, they couldn't control the weather of the Wei River. The scene where the water was half calm and half raging waves was like something that could be done by the great beings in the legends. They originally thought that Ning Tianxing was terrifying enough to be able to do that. That was also why Ning Tianxing was able to squeeze out countless young talents in the Qingjiang dynasty at a young age and become the deputy general of the Triumph military force. No one thought that there was someone in the world who could control water as well as Ning Tianxing. Boom! Boom! Two dull sounds were heard. Ning Tianxing and Lin Yuan each took 3 steps back. Lin Yuan was punched in the abdomen, but his puppet body had no internal organs and no aura, so he was only pushed back a few steps by the strange force. Ning Tianxing, on the other hand, was punched in the face. His nose was caved in, and a lot of blood flowed down. However, he still had a smile on his face, and it was impossible to tell that he was injured by a punch. You are very strange. You can actually suppress my ability to control water. Ning Tianxing wiped the blood off his face, as if he didn't notice that he was injured. He sneered and said, "But you won't be so lucky next time. You let me have a weakness, but you have a bigger weakness." Lin Yuan tilted his head and sneered, "I know, I don't have enough strength. If we have the same strength, this punch of mine can directly smash your head. But if you want to compete in physical skills, are you sure you can do it?" When Lin Yuan's voice fell, the smile on Ning Tianxing's face froze. He couldn't see through Lin Yuan's cultivation at all, but in terms of control of the Wei River, the two sides seemed to be evenly matched. Moreover, the other side had a strange ability that kept suppressing him, causing him to be restrained. He could only use 70% of his strength, and he felt inexplicably uncomfortable. What was even more strange was that Lin Yuan was able to fight evenly with him, but was far inferior to him in terms of strength. As Lin Yuan said, if it was a cultivator of the same level as him, that punch just now could directly smash his head. Even if it didn't shatter, it could make him faint. But this punch only broke the bridge of his nose. For an existence like him, even his fighting strength wasn't affected, and it wouldn't take long for him to recover. In terms of strength, it could be said that the other side's level was lower than his, but the strength of his body was a bit too terrifying. Although the two of them were fighting with their lives on the line just now. Ning Tianxing made this judgment after testing Lin Yuan's strength, but Lin Yuan didn't seem to care at all, as if he didn't think Ning Tianxing had the ability to hurt him. He directly hit his fist with his abdomen, resulting in a situation where one punch was exchanged for another. But even so, Lin Yuan wasn't afraid of fighting. Even if other forces took advantage of him during the time he went to the West Sea Dragon Palace, it wouldn't destroy his foundation. At worst, he could take revenge on them one by one in the future. Lin Yuan didn't want to reveal his true form because he didn't think it was necessary. But Ning Tianxing was also a demonic beast. If the intensity of the battle was too high, he would most likely reveal his true form or use demonic power to fight with Lin Yuan. If he revealed his demonic power in front of the elites of the victorious army, Ning Tianxing wouldn't have a foothold in the Azure River Empire in the future. So when Lin Yuan planned to continue the battle, Ning Tianxing took the initiative to retreat, indicating that he didn't want to continue being an enemy. "I'm very interested in you. Can you tell me how you interfered with my control of the Wei River?" Ning Tianxing slowly put down his hand that was covering his nose. His nose that was broken by Lin Yuan had completely healed, and he returned to his appearance when he got off the boat. It was as if the battle just now didn't happen at all. "Then can you tell me how you managed to transform?" Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly, and he asked with a faint smile. As his voice fell, both of them fell silent. Transforming into a demonic beast was Ning Tianxing's biggest taboo. Although there were rumors that he was a demonic beast, it was just that he accidentally revealed his demonic aura when he was ignorant. After that, he and Zhao Xiang cleaned up all the loose ends. Those who had evidence had already been killed. So what was circulating was just a rumor. Not many people had evidence that he was a demonic beast. And Zhao Xiang, who knew his identity, had to rely on Ning Tianxing, this evil dragon, to protect the Azure River Empire after he died. So, he wouldn't say a word to the outside world. So far, Ning Tianxing was undoubtedly very safe. Even if someone like Lin Yuan knew his identity, it was useless. Even if an outsider said it, how many people would believe it? The royal family of the Azure River Empire had probably communicated with Zhao Xiang long ago and also knew his identity. It was just that before a new guardian appeared in the Azure River Empire and had enough confidence to deal with him, the royal family would definitely not do anything to him. Instead, they would strictly protect his identity. But, this was still his taboo. Although it wasn't to the extent of exploding on the spot, Ning Tianxing quickly realized that the ability to control other people's water was also a secret to Lin Yuan that wasn't inferior to his transformation. If he wanted to know the origin and cultivation method of this ability, he had to tell Lin Yuan an equivalent secret. Then forget it. Ning Tianxing looked at Lin Yuan with vigilance. Lin Yuan shook his head and interrupted Ning Tianqing's excuse. He smiled and said, I don't think I will just let it go like this. Sooner or later, I will know the secret of your transformation. Do you believe me? Ning Tianqing was silent for a moment and slowly raised his middle finger at Lin Yuan. He said coldly, if that day really comes, it means that the Azure River Empire will be flattened by you, boss. I know you are from the northern frontier, but don't tell me you think that Black Jiao has the ability to take down the Azure River Empire? Why not? Lin Yuan shrugged and didn't comment on Ning Tianqing's opinion. He even had a hint of mockery. The Black Jiao wants the Azure River Empire's territory. Sure, let his northern frontier king send troops to fight. If those Northland barbarians can defeat old Zhao's victorious army, not to mention my secret, I can even tell you the secret of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Ning Tianqing obviously didn't intend to continue hiding his identity from Lin Yuan, who had seen through his identity. He even vaguely pointed out his relationship with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Only then did he look at Lin Yuan with a faint smile. This guy from the northern frontier obviously wanted to go out to sea. Now that he had offended the members of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas before he even reached the sea, he would suffer when he went out to sea. Unfortunately, Lin Yuan's face was still as calm as before. He wasn't scared by Ning Tianqing at all. It seemed that he couldn't even cooperate with him to make a surprised and fearful expression to satisfy Ning Tianqing's bad taste. Shall we make a bet? Lin Yuan shrugged his shoulders, raised his eyebrows and asked. Chapter 634. Bet? Interesting. Tell me, how do you want to bet? Lin Yuan wasn't frightened. Instead, Ning Tianqing's curiosity was piqued by Lin Yuan and he asked excitedly. Due to his ferocious personality, Ning Tianqing's existence was very important to the Azure River Empire. Hence, his status was very high. However, there weren't many who were willing to make friends with him. Most of them didn't even have the guts to joke with him, let alone bet with him. I will bet with you. Within half a year, cross the northern frontier and flatten the Azure River Navy. If I lose, I will tell you what my ability is. If you lose, other than the secret of your transformation, I want you to work for me. Lin Yuan spoke very quickly, but his tone was resolute as if there was no room for doubt. Such words might sound like a loss to others, but to Ning Tianqing, a great demon who could control the Wei River, it was rather attractive. After all, it was like Zhao Xiang's status in the Azure River Empire. Although he was respected, he didn't lack challengers. Ning Tianqing's status in the Wei River was the same. Although most of the demonic beasts didn't dare to compete with him, there were still plenty of demonic beasts who didn't listen to his orders. Even the flood dragons from the endless sea coveted his position. There were more challengers than Zhao Xiang. If it wasn't for his transformation, he would have been chased to other places to make a living. However, if he had Lin Yuan's ability to interfere with others' control of water, his status in the Wei River would be completely stabilized. Even the dragon race from the endless sea might not be able to threaten his position. Sure. Ning Tianqing nodded. There wasn't much expression on his face, but there was obvious excitement in his eyes. Previously, he didn't dare to confirm Lin Yuan's identity. However, according to the news that came back, a vice president of the Association of the Demon Emperor obviously didn't have the guts and ability to subdue a famous general of the Azure River Empire. Moreover, Lin Yuan had already seen through his disguise as a demonic beast. Unless the uncrowned king of the northern frontier personally came out. In addition, he had smelled the scent of his own kind from Lin Yuan's body, as well as the faintly discernible demonic energy when the two of them fought. Coupled with Lin Yuan's question about his transformation, all of this had exposed Lin Yuan's identity. If Ning Tian was the role model of the younger generation of water generals in the Qingjiang dynasty. In that case, Lin Yuan, who took advantage of the chaos as a demon beast to rise to prominence and become a dominant figure, vaguely showing signs of annexing the Shenwu dynasty, was undoubtedly the role model in the hearts of all demon beasts. However, just like how Lin Yuan wouldn't reveal his identity as a demonic beast, he wouldn't be stupid enough to reveal Lin Yuan's identity. On the surface, he was a water general of the Qingjiang dynasty, but secretly, he was a spy planted by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. How could he not know that Lin Yuan went south because of the invitation of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? Even the little princess of the West Sea Dragon Palace stayed in the northern frontier for a period of time. If he revealed Lin Yuan's true identity now, then Lin Yuan would have enough reason to return to the northern frontier and ignore the invitation of the West Sea Dragon Palace. Lin Yuan's side was fine. At most, the West Sea Dragon Palace would continue to torture him. If he ruined the plans of the West Sea Dragon Palace, the dragon race in the Endless Sea would definitely not mind tearing him apart or sinking him to the bottom of the Endless Sea to be classified as a sin dragon. I've already spoken to my subordinates. They said that if I can't stop you, then there's no need to stop you in the later stages. Ning Tianqing stretched his body and said with a smile, "It's about time to finish clearing all the stages. If you can get past old man Zhao, then everything will be peaceful. Otherwise, you can only take the land route and return to the sea with your true form." As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Tianqing waved his hand and walked back to his ship with a nonchalant expression. The previous battle was very fast, and both parties did not use their full strength. Hence, it looked like they were evenly matched. However, if Ning Tianqing returned to his ship like this, it meant that he admitted that he had lost to Lin Yuan. Including him, all the previous stages of Zhao Xiang would choose to let him pass and not continue to stop Lin Yuan from clearing the stage. After all, Zhao Xiang was old. The Qingjiang dynasty would not disrespect Ning Tianqing. However, to Ning Tianqing, who had never been defeated before, it was undoubtedly a huge blow. Even those competitors who no longer coveted his position as the next general of the victorious army would have their ambitions reignited. After taking a few steps, Ning Tianqing turned back and said, "As for the transfiguration method, although I can't tell you directly, I can reveal some information to you. Before I transfigured, I was the Dragon King of an area along the coast of the Qingjiang dynasty." Speaking of this, Ning Tianqing paused again. A touch of shame appeared on his face, and he said in a low voice, "But I'm not the real Dragon King. You know that the people along the coast and river always like to call some aquatic monsters the Dragon King. *CK, they don't care about the reputation of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas at all. Of course, the Dragon King won't settle accounts with them, but he will definitely deal with us." After speaking, he waved his hand and strode away. He had no intention of looking back. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. Could the transfiguration method be related to the power of incense? Be it in his previous life or this life, humans seem to be particular about living off the mountains and living off the rivers. There were actually human villages in the Hengduan mountain range, but these villages would consecrate the nearby Beast King as their guardian deity. It wasn't the kind of consecration that would build a temple. Instead, they would regularly hand over meat and fays as tributes in exchange for safety. However, these people who lived near the water really had to take boats to fish. They had to face those ferocious monsters directly. Therefore, they had to be sincere when worshipping the Beast King. Otherwise, they would be using themselves as tributes again. Boasting that the other party was the Dragon King, the Water God, and so on were just basic operations. They would often open temples and even worship during festivals as if they really treated the other party as a deity. After a long time, if the Beast King that was worshipped could really guarantee their peace, it would naturally develop into true believers to provide them with the power of incense. In his previous life, because of the myths, there were many mountain gods and water gods. However, there were many cultivators in the Sky Martial continent. Although there were legends, in their eyes, the so-called gods were just powerful cultivators. In addition to the land's demonic beasts, there were not many mountain gods. On the contrary, there were many water gods. Ning Tianqing should have been one of them. However, if the transfiguration method was related to the power of incense, how much incense would it take to transfiguration? Previously, when he traded with Lei Qiusheng, 200,000 incense, Lin Yuan did not hear the system prompt that he could transfiguration. Was there a problem with the method Ning Tianxing gave him, or did he not have enough incense at that time? Chapter 635. Lin Yuan couldn't figure out the relationship between shape-shifting and the power of incense, so he could only let out a long sigh. He walked back to his boat and continued towards the estuary. Ning Tianxing didn't have a good reputation in the Qingjiang dynasty, but as a powerful man, he had always been regarded as the successor of the guardian of the Qingjiang dynasty after Zhao Xiang, so his prestige in the army wasn't low. With Ning Tianxing's greeting, the rest of Lin Yuan's journey could be said to be unimpeded. When passing through the remaining checkpoints, the generals just stood at the bow of the ship and glanced curiously at the young man who could fight with Ning Tianxing on the surface of the Wei River, but did not intend to make a move. The Baixing Navy's boat formation was divided into 5 levels. To pass the checkpoint, one had to pass through these 5 formations. After passing the first 4 checkpoints easily, Lin Yuan saw the 5th checkpoint appear in his sight. He instantly gasped. There were no fighting boats prepared to intercept the boat, nor were there any arrows or stones as he expected. However, there were many ships chained together on the Wei River, occupying almost the entire river. Lin Yuan's sight was filled with the shadows of huge ships and sails. Such a scene was visually shocking. Whoosh! A sharp arrow pierced through the air at an extremely fast speed. In almost an instant, the small black that had already arrived in front of Lin Yuan. The ice shield that easily blocked the first arrow didn't even manage to block it properly. It was torn apart by this small arrow and turned into a pile of ice shards that fell into the Wei River. Buzz! The stone arrowhead hit Lin Yuan's right shoulder. A majestic force rolled in. Lin Yuan, who was standing at the bow, didn't even have time to react before he was pushed to the stern by this force. If he hadn't hooked the boat with his foot in time, this arrow alone would have knocked him off the boat. But even so, the boat that was hooked by Lin Yuan's foot was pushed back thousands of meters and was almost pushed into the 4th checkpoint. He could vaguely hear the exclamations and laughter of the 4th Navy from time to time. It seemed that someone was betting on whether Lin Yuan could take the second arrow of Marshal Zhao. The defending general of the 4th checkpoint came to a ship near Lin Yuan and said in a deep voice, "Boy, our Navy's battle isn't the same as the one on land that can be won by morale and ferocity. Even if you have great abilities, you won't be able to use them in the water." The 5th checkpoint was set by Marshal Zhao himself. The condition to pass is very simple. As long as you can take 3 arrows of Marshal Zhao without falling off the boat, you pass. Speaking of this, he paused, as if he wanted to form a good relationship, and added, according to the usual practice, "The Marshal just now wanted to greet you, so he only used 20% of his strength at most. The next 2 arrows are 70% of his strength and 10% of his strength respectively. If you are ready, then row the boat forward. If you feel that you can't handle it, then go back home, lest you become a drowned rat." Although the rules were the same, it wasn't easy. If it was an ordinary Qing River Navy, judging from Lin Yuan's ability to easily pass the 1st checkpoint, not to mention the 5th checkpoint, even the 10th checkpoint wouldn't be able to stop him. But Lin Yuan was facing the victorious army, which was at the level of hell in the game. This was because the last obstacle in the battle against the victorious army was Zhao Xiang's unique archery skill, calm disturbance. It was said that this was a secret technique that Zhao Xiang had created in his early years when he had made a name for himself. Regardless of how the outside world praised it, in the eyes of the Qingjiang soldiers, only those who could withstand the 3 arrows of petrifying wind were qualified to be called first class. However, after Zhao Xiang had created this secret technique, he had used it frequently. However, only 3 people had been able to withstand it. One was eunuch Tai of the Shenwu dynasty, one was the leader of the Qing River Navy, and the last one was Ning Tianxing. Over the years, there were countless sons of generals who wanted to join the victorious army as generals. But because the entrance examination of the victorious army was to take the secret skill of calm disturbance, only a few could pass. Although the one who used the bow was only Zhao Xiang's son, there were only a few who could pass the checkpoint. This time, the marshal personally drew the bow, and the power is naturally not comparable to the calm disturbance of the Zhao family's descendant. They saw with their own eyes the effect of forcing Lin Yuan to retreat nearly a kilometer with only 20% of the power. Got it. Lin Yuan nodded slightly and raised his eyebrows. His opponent's arrow was very fast. Even if Qin Yu used the special bow of the northern frontier, he could not achieve such a fast arrow. But the arrow just now only used 20% of his strength? Just how terrifying was the true strength of this general of the victorious army, whom Lei Qiusheng did not place in his eyes? Lin Yuan always felt that this world seemed to be controlled by the top forces, but the 7 subordinate dynasties did not seem to be soft persimmons. Just like Lei Qiusheng had the shadow beside him, and the Qing River Empire had Zhao Xiang, they all secretly hid extremely terrifying strength. It was just that they had not been forced to the point where they had to explode. Thinking of this, the corners of Lin Yuan's mouth curled up slightly. He murmured, "Let's see how strong your victorious duke is first." Lin Yuan's voice was very soft. Even the general who spoke to him before did not hear him. He only saw Lin Yuan lowering his head and murmuring a few words. Then, he steered the boat forward again. Further away, the second arrow of calm disturbance was shot out. The speed of this arrow was more than twice as fast as the previous one. Obviously, as the general said, Zhao Xiang's first arrow was just a greeting to Lin Yuan. Moreover, this arrow was not only extremely fast, but the timing of the shot was also perfect. It was shot right at the moment when Lin Yuan steered the boat forward. From afar, it looked like Lin Yuan was going to receive the arrow himself. In addition to the speed and timing, the angle was also quite tricky. Although there was a rule of not harming people's lives, this arrow went straight for Lin Yuan's lower abdomen. If hit by this arrow, even a Heaven Dipper realm cultivator would lose their ability to resist on the spot and be pushed off the skiff by the force of the arrow. Lin Yuan tilted his head. His long and narrow eyes narrowed, like a fox eyeing its prey. The greeting arrow just now was not easy to receive. The puppet made of various precious metals mixed with Lin Yuan scales did not have the best defense in the world. However, any armor made of such materials could be called an invulnerable treasure armor. However, Zhao Xiang's arrow hit the right button. Until now, Lin Yuan could still feel that the joint of the right button had caved in and was unable to move freely. If such an injury fell on an ordinary person, even a cultivator with a strong constitution would probably lose an arm. Chapter 636. Zhao Xiang had indeed greeted him, but he did not care if the other party could accept his greeting. Lin Yuan did not know if Zhao Xiang had done it on purpose or if he had overestimated his strength, but from the injuries on the puppet's body, he could feel Zhao Xiang's strong malice. Even if he did not want to take his life with this arrow, he most likely wanted to cripple one of his hands. After all, it was a fact that he had forced Ning Tianxing to surrender in a one-on-one battle in the field that Ning Tianxing specialized in. As the current marshal of the victorious army, Zhao Xiang naturally did not wish for an existence that could threaten Ning Tianxing to appear in the ambitious northern frontier. Because if that happened, the navy that the Qing River Empire was so proud of could be crushed by the northern frontier at any time. How could they protect their country? If it was an official of another empire or a wanderer of the pugilistic world, Zhao Xiang might have extended an olive branch. However, after knowing that the other party came from the Northern Territory, a faction that had not been used in the past 2 years since it was a land of desolation, Zhao Xiang knew that the Azure River Empire, which was considered weak even among the 7 empires, would definitely not attract the other party. Then, "I'll return it to you." Lin Yuan's pitch-black eyes flashed, and his body rushed forward. He actually jumped up from the boat and took the initiative to meet the arrow. Lin Yuan's hands were in a strange posture. His movements were almost slow to the extreme, but he seemed to be deducing some kind of truth. However, the arrow, which was countless times faster than Lin Yuan's movements, was constantly rotating and struggling between Lin Yuan's hands. It was constantly rotating around Lin Yuan, who was suspended in the air. Tai Chi grasping Sparrow's tail. Although the martial technique that he had trained so hard in his previous life was executed in the posture of an ordinary person, it was just some kind of fist technique that was used to strengthen the body. However, the concept of Tai Chi was one of the highest martial techniques that Lin Yuan knew. Whether it was using speed to fight slow, or using strength to break a technique, it was obviously not just a little bit inferior to using 4 tails to pull 1,000 caddies. This fist technique was executed with the extraordinary interest of a cultivator, and the power that it could unleash was not something that an ordinary person could imagine. If it had to be categorized according to the Sky Martial Continent's rankings, Tai Chi fist would definitely belong to the upper earth grade or lower heaven grade. Furthermore, it was the kind of terrifying martial technique that would not be weak when facing a weak opponent, but would be even stronger when facing a strong opponent. In a situation where there was no absolute difference in strength between the two, Lin Yuan couldn't think of anything that Tai Chi couldn't handle. Furthermore, the experience he had gained over 10 years of training in his previous life combined with the extraordinary quality of his puppet body allowed him to unleash the full power of Tai Chi. It was just that his right hand was still a little unnatural, so this grasping the bird's tail couldn't be considered beautiful. The arrow circled around Lin Yuan 4 times, like a tamed beast, humming to express its submission. Only then did Lin Yuan slowly push it out with the Taiji stance. Suddenly, it burst out with a speed even more terrifying than before, heading straight for Zhao Xiang, who was at the bow of the ship. Tisk! The corner of Zhao Xiang's mouth twitched slightly, and he suddenly released the large bow that was fully drawn. The third arrow left the bowstring, but its target was no longer Lin Yuan, but the second arrow that was flying back. The 2 arrows collided in midair, and it was as if 2 peerless experts were attacking each other with all their strength on the Wei River. The arrow, which was made of ordinary material, instantly exploded into fine powder, and the aftershock of the explosion spread out in all directions. Both sides were affected at the same time, but Lin Yuan was only pushed back to his own small boat by the shockwave, taking 3 steps back. Every step he took caused the surrounding river to ripple, as if there were thunder exploding in the water, continuously producing muffled sounds. On the other hand, on Zhao Xiang's side, the situation was obviously not as ideal as Lin Yuan's. Zhao Xiang, who had drawn his bow, was unmoved. When the powerful shockwave hit him, his face sank, and he took a firm horse stance, stabilizing his figure and the ship he was on. However, the other ships were not so lucky. They were all pushed back by the terrifying shockwave, and the victorious 100 army soldiers on the edge of the ship fell into the Wei River one after another like dumplings. They were swept into the rolling river before they could even call for help. The victorious 100 army soldiers who had withstood the shockwave with great difficulty didn't even have time to count their losses before they shouted and put down their lifeboats, rowing the boats to save their comrades who had fallen into the water. When all the chaos finally subsided, someone cried out in surprise, expressing disbelief at what had just happened. The iron chain connecting the ship to the river seemed to be unable to withstand the powerful impact and broke almost instantly. The other ships that had lost the iron chain were also pushed back by the impact. Except for the ship that Zhao Xiang was on, the other ships were all pushed back by more than 100 meters. If there was a comparison, it was undoubtedly more exaggerated that Zhao Xiang's arrow had forced Lin Yuan back by 1,000 meters. However, in terms of the actual effect, it was clear which ship was more important when compared to the hundreds of ships. Especially the ship that Zhao Xiang was on. It stood majestically in the same place, forming a sharp contrast with the other ships that were retreating. This made many soldiers of the victorious 100 army feel a burning sensation on their faces. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that in the previous battle, it was obvious that the evil young man with a background had won. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Zhao Xiang, who was standing at the bow of the ship, withdrew his posture. His face was gloomy as he spat out these words one by one. Soon after, he waved his hand and walked directly to the cabin of the ship without looking at Lin Yuan's next move. When there was no one around, Zhao Xiang's face paled. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of black blood. His body swayed as if he would fall down at any moment. In the previous round of confrontation, he had indeed lost. However, he didn't lose in terms of strength, but in his haste to make a move that caused him to suffer a loss. Calm disturbance was not a game of 20% strength, 70% strength, or 10% strength. Instead, it was similar to the technique of those cavalry generals. Each arrow was steadier and more powerful than the last. The third arrow was already an arrow that far exceeded his strength. However, in order to shoot this arrow, he needed to have enough time to accumulate strength. Contrary to his expectations, Lin Yuan was not forced back by the second arrow. Instead, he used an evil method to shoot the second arrow back. This forced him to hastily shoot the third arrow. The moment he let go, he suffered a backlash from the secret technique and suffered heavy injuries. If not for his vigorous cultivation, he probably wouldn't have been able to hold on. He would have collapsed to the ground, dead on the spot, and would have to recuperate for a long time. However, the situation was urgent. Naturally, he couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Others didn't know how terrifying his second arrow was, but how could he not know? If he left it alone, this ship would probably collapse in an instant. Apart from himself, there wouldn't be a second person on the ship that would survive. Therefore, he had no choice but to take action despite the backlash. Chapter 637. If Lin Yuan was just an unaffiliated martial artist, he wouldn't have had to take this arrow and watch as the other party slaughtered the soldiers on the ship. Then, he could point out that the other party had broken the rules of clearing the level and directly detain Lin Yuan. Whether he was locked up in the Azure River Empire or killed on the spot, there wouldn't be any problems. However, Lin Yuan wasn't a lone wolf. Behind him stood the northern frontier, which even the top forces had to be wary of. Not to mention the identity of this brat in the northern frontier, the fact that he was able to be released by the Black Jiao when the Sky Demon army was about to attack the northern frontier was enough to prove that this brat was under the orders of the Black Jiao. For a hidden danger that could threaten the Azure River Empire, would he provoke the true hidden danger and lead the troops of the northern frontier to the Azure River Empire? Naturally, Zhao Xiang knew how to answer such a simple multiple-choice question. Therefore, he chose to use his own hands as the price to settle this matter. It could also be considered as paying the price for his evil thoughts when he wanted to kill this talent from the northern frontier. After Zhao Xiang left, the rest of the victorious army naturally would not offend Lin Yuan without Zhao Xiang's permission out of fear. The helmsman controlled the ships and made way for Lin Yuan to pass through a waterway that was large enough for the skiff to pass through. I hope that the next time I come back, you can still maintain your current spirit. When passing by Zhao Xiang's ship, Lin Yuan lightly knocked on the ship's wall with a sinister smile on his face. Who was the best spy in the world? The people from the 7 empires might have different opinions, but to Lin Yuan, this question wasn't worth thinking about. Even if it was Yi Bus Ho and the embroidered uniform guard selected by the system, they could only stand at the top of the food chain of spies in this world, and they weren't the only ones. The most powerful spies would always be those invisible and formless heavenly demons. When they weren't bound by their physical bodies, although they couldn't affect anything, they could use the identity of a bystander to witness everything that happened in any corner of the world. No matter how tight the seal was, it couldn't stop the invisible sky demon. The victorious army couldn't see it, but that didn't mean that Lin Yuan couldn't see it. When he took the ship south, there were countless sky demon following behind his ship. Therefore, everything that happened here was clearly seen by the sky demons. Ordinary soldiers didn't know that Zhao Xiang was injured, but Lin Yuan and the sky demon knew. Soon, the sky demon army was like a shark that smelled blood, crazily converging towards the south. Because their current strength wasn't enough to compete with the northern frontier, they needed more physical bodies to release more companions to increase their combat strength. Under the situation that the northern frontier couldn't be breached and they couldn't leave the Xunwu dynasty's territory, the rebel army in the south was naturally the best choice. In the past, the rebel army in the south had the support of the victorious army and the Xinjiang navy, so it was naturally more than enough to resist the sky demon. But now? Zhao Xiang was injured, and the victorious army's morale was affected. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Even if the Qingjiang dynasty wouldn't shrink their defense line and defend their territory, they definitely wouldn't be able to support the rebel army in the south as much as before. Those who planned before taking action were not necessarily wise, but those who rationally analyzed the current situation and led the situation in a direction that was beneficial to them were definitely worthy of being called wise. On the other side, Ning Tianxing put his hands behind his back, and the red bell at his waist gently shook. The incorporeal sky demon were like small fish that were sucked into a whirlpool without any resistance. They were easily sucked into the sound of the bell and became absent-minded, slowly gathering towards Ning Tianxing. The victorious army behind Ning Tianxing hurriedly followed Ning Tianxing's instructions, stuffing the sky demon into the magic sealing bottle one by one, waiting for Ning Tianxing's next command. That guy, is he really not a sky demon? Ning Tianxing's eyes narrowed slightly, and his hands kept pointing at the areas where the sky demon was as he muttered to himself. Previously, Lin Yuan's demonic aura was covering up, so he couldn't sense the sky demon's invasion at all. However, after Lin Yuan left, he was shocked to realize that there were at least 100 sky demons following Lin Yuan. Even though he tried his best to stop them, it was still a drop in the bucket, because he didn't know how many sky demons had entered the deeper areas under Lin Yuan's cover. After thinking carefully for a moment, Ning Tianxing's expression suddenly changed, and he cursed angrily, "What a great diversion." After figuring out some of the key points, Ning Tianxing didn't care about continuing to capture the sky demon. He waved his hand to summon a guard, and said in a deep voice, "Go and prepare a warship. I have something important to do, and I have to see foster father immediately." But the guard opened his mouth, and there was a hesitant expression on his face. Ning Tianxing had a special ability to sense the existence of the sky demon, and with the artifacts on him, he could easily capture the sky demon. When he returned, he could send these magic sealing bottles filled with sky demon to the members of the top forces, and he could immediately exchange them for a large amount of rewards. Therefore, even if he had to disobey Ning Tianxing once, he didn't want to cut off everyone's source of income. "I know what you are thinking, but now, put away your greed and do as I say." Ning Tianxing grabbed the guard's collar and said with a gloomy face, "This matter concerns the survival of the Azure River Empire. If you make a mistake, even if I let you go, the Azure River Imperial family and Marshal Zhao won't let you go." "Yes, I will go and prepare." The guard was 1.9 meters tall, but in front of Ning Tianxing's strength, he was like a child who hadn't grown up. He was easily picked up by Ning Tianxing with one hand, and he didn't even have the slightest room to resist. He could only agree with a red face. After letting go of the guard, Ning Tianxing patted his cheek and cursed, "Mother****, Black Jiao, I knew you would play tricks. No wonder you dared to make a bet. So you wanted to let the sky demon consume our strength first, and then reap the benefits? Don't let me see you again. Mother****, scheming against me." After cursing and venting a bit, Ning Tianxing walked towards the stern of the ship. A boat was quickly lowered by the soldiers on the ship. Even with the sky demon scurrying around, these ordinary soldiers didn't dare to be dissatisfied with Ning Tianxing's orders in the slightest. His ferocity was evident. Ning Tianxing slightly nodded and stepped onto the boat. He turned his head and roared, "What the F***ck are you standing there for? There are sky demon everywhere. Even if you run around with the magic sealing bottles, you can still catch a dozen. What are you looking at me for? Can you get rich looking at me? F***ck." After he finished speaking, the surrounding victorious army looked at each other in dismay. After a moment of silence, they actually ran around with the magic sealing bottles. Chapter 638. Time passed by slowly. Lin Yuan sat in the boat, drifting on the endless sea for more than half a month. He had never been out to sea in his previous life, nor did he learn how to use the stars to determine the direction. After less than 3 days out to sea, Lin Yuan was completely at a loss after losing all his references. He didn't even know where he was now. Moreover, the surrounding sea was beyond his imagination. Even if there were life forms, they were just ordinary sea creatures. He couldn't even catch a demon beast to ask for directions. Although the moist and salty sea breeze made him feel at ease as a water flood dragon, this kind of aimless drifting made Lin Yuan inexplicably irritated. As for letting Ao Qian lead the way, that was obviously not in Lin Yuan's interest. Whether it was the blood feud in his previous life or the endless trouble caused by his kindness this time, Lin Yuan liked to have the greatest malice towards those who existed other than himself when he was thinking. The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was not the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas that Lin Yuan knew in his previous life. Even if they were still tyrannical in the Tianwu continent and easily stood at the top of the food chain as an outsider, they still couldn't escape the incomparable nature of the Tianwu continent and the untainted world. Compared to those in the legends, it was an insult to call the Dragon Clan here trash. Who would have thought that the infamous Dragon Palace of the Four Seas didn't even have a few pure-blooded true dragons? In front of Lin Yuan, who grew from an ordinary black snake to a pure-blooded water flood dragon, if the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was not interested in the methods to purify the bloodline or awaken the bloodline, Lin Yuan would rather believe that a pie would fall from the sky. Therefore, when he had to go to the Endless Sea to meet the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, Lin Yuan had to have Ao Qian firmly in his hands. At least he could ensure that when the two sides fell out, he had enough bargaining chips in his hands to negotiate with the other side. Although this premise had to be based on the premise that Ao Qian was indeed the descendant of some big shot in the Dragon Palace, at least he would have some confidence to reject the excessive request of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. He did not dare to say that he could run amok in the Endless Sea, but if the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas wanted to take advantage of him, they would have to think twice. However, if he let Ao Qian out, he, as a foreign demon beast, would be nothing more than a toy that the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could do whatever they wanted. He wouldn't even be qualified to say no. Suddenly, Lin Yuan, who was sitting on the boat, stood up. His dark eyes flashed as he said in a deep voice, "Friends in front, since you're already here, why don't you come up and have a chat?" As the voice fell, the sea in front of Lin Yuan slightly fluctuated. A monster with a fish head, a human body, and a snake tail slowly splashed water. Although its dark green skin was rare, it was not as eye-catching as its muscles that contained explosive power. It also held a brass trident in its hand. Its appearance was very similar to the Naga that often appeared in movies and games in Lin Yuan's previous life. Lin Yuan and the Naga looked at each other in dismay. The Naga was silent for a moment, then silently turned around. Obviously, it had no intention to talk to Lin Yuan. It was as if it appeared only because Lin Yuan called it, and it showed its face out of politeness. You don't plan to say anything?" Lin Yuan was dumbfounded as he looked at the Naga that was about to leave. He could not stay silent any longer. The Naga turned its face, and with an extremely disdainful tone, it skillfully spat out the common language of the Sky Martial Continent. "Should I say, the Endless Sea is a forbidden area for humans, and if you don't get lost, I will kill you?" Lin Yuan's eyes widened as he looked at the Naga in front of him in disbelief. This guy, did he also transmigrate and reborn? Logically speaking, when the demonic beasts in the sea saw humans, they would usually shout out like this before they died. Hearing Lin Yuan's doubtful voice, the Naga looked at Lin Yuan meaningfully. It casually stabbed the brass trident into the sea beside it, and it actually stood on the spot as if it was stabbing into the ground. Then, it cupped its fists and said, "I can't beat you, sorry to disturb you, goodbye." Lin Yuan? After confirming with his eyes, this guy really transmigrated. The Naga jumped like a sea snake entering the water, but it only made a jumping action, and that somewhat funny fish head crashed into a piece of solidified ice. It wanted to use its strong arms to support itself on the ice to stand up, but it kept sliding on the ice, like a salted fish that had come ashore. "What the hell are you trying to do?" After dozens of attempts to stand up, the Naga finally could not endure it any longer. It lay down on the ice as if it had accepted its fate, and weakly roared at Lin Yuan. "How do I get to the West Sea Dragon Palace?" Lin Yuan tilted his head, and resisted the urge to laugh at the other party's salted fish flopping around. even though he did not know what was going on with the Sky Marshal Continent's chaotic geographical names. Those who had a little understanding of the Sky Marshal Continent would know that the Hengduan mountain range was located in the center of the Sky Marshal Continent, and the Endless Sea was the sea that Lin Yuan had only entered after he had kept going south. No matter how he thought about it, it should be called the South Sea Dragon Palace. However, whether it was Ao Qian or other existences, it seemed that no one questioned the name of the West Sea Dragon Palace. The Naga sighed and said, "You can just float forward like this. When you see a dragon bloodline demonic beast, it means that you have reached the territory of the West Sea Dragon Palace. This is still the Outer Sea, and the West Sea Dragon Palace does not care about the barren resources and land here. Us demonic beasts from the Outer Sea will not be able to come into contact with the Dragon Palace's species, much less know the location of the West Sea Dragon Palace. So, you are just wasting your breath trying to stop me. Why bother? Why don't we just pretend that we have never seen each other?" Lin Yuan was speechless. He had never thought that the speed of the boat could reach at least 2,000 kilometers per hour. Such a speed in his previous life was already at the level of a fighter jet. However, after maintaining this speed for half a month, he was still in the outer sea of the Endless Sea? Was it because he did not recognize the direction clearly, so when he was rushing, he deviated from the route and went in circles? Or was the Endless Sea really unimaginably vast, and was it really worthy of the word endless? "You seem to be very afraid of me, but also not afraid of me. Why?" Lin Yuan asked in confusion. This Naga did not seem to be willing to have any conflict with him, but intentionally or unintentionally, it revealed a kind of contempt towards Lin Yuan. It seemed that letting Lin Yuan continue to wander in the outer sea would not affect these demonic beasts at all. A big trouble had appeared in front of them, but they did not seem to care about it at all. This was very contradictory, and also very difficult to understand. However, Lin Yuan was very interested in the way the demonic beasts thought. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.